We are live. So we got Angela Knight joining us. If you're not familiar with Angela, she's the girl who single-handedly, well, actually, no, it wasn't just her. There's other
Yeah,
people involved
yeah.
who play a large role in embarrassing, demasculating, and pretty much ending MLD's career. So for that, we owe you a big thank you. But she's also a podcast. She does a lot of stuff. I'll let her introduce herself. So Angela, how do you characterize yourself? Podcaster, debater?
Well, as in right now, I'm just sort of, I guess, streamer, commentator on the current dating topics that I see online. Podcasting is a little bit brutal, so I just kind of figuring it out right now.
Cool. Yeah. So, guys, so here's going to be the format. The first part of this is going to be maybe 20 minutes. It'll just be a discussion. I actually just want to ask Angela a few questions. And then the second part, the most part, will be the debate. So we found there are some disagreements that we have. Angela was kind enough to send me a big list of things she believes, and I probably disagree with about half of it. So we'll have some fun with it. But yeah, let's start off with this part because I mean I'm assuming this is what like at least for me, I learned about you through the MLD thing. Was that like your viral moment, so as to speak?
Um, Unfortunately, yeah, it's not what I wanted. I think I've had a lot of beef with them in the past 8 months, in I guess the mainstream manosphere stuff. So for me, that was just kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go balls to the wall with this.
What was like the reason for the beef that you had prior to this?
But I think like everyone in the space in general, and I guess like that's why the word grifting would come in. A lot of people would disagree, but I think people have this idea that I'm supposed to just blindly agree to everything, but I'm allowed to question the inconsistency of whatever this space is. And I think like for me coming in, it wasn't because I wanted to be anything. It was more so like I saw a truth that needed to be vocalized, and I was a girl. It's easy to vocalize your point as a girl because there's not many women that would do it. But where I think that falls short in is like you think that you're actually saying something that has substance, but in reality, you're just kind of like sitting in an echo chamber, making excuses and enabling a lot of these guys to be the way that they are. So I
Yes.
gave a little pushback on that. And instead of them kind of challenging my views, it was more so like, all right, let's just crucify this chick because she has the audacity to ask this question. So I'm constantly getting like, I guess, like blacklisted or pushed to the side because it's like, who do you think you are, questioning something that's been around longer than you have? And I'm like, well, then just answer the fucking question so we don't have to like talk about this unicorn forever. But it's something that they don't really want to talk about. So all right, I'm gonna just call yourself an entertainment clown then, so we don't have to fucking assume that you're empowering people. It's embarrassing.
I mean, I agree with everything you said. So, in terms of the MLD thing, so okay. So, as far as I followed the story loosely. So, he was basically talking shit about you in the chat before that stream, right? There was a little context.
Yeah, he was just basically being a troll, but I think that the personal vendetta against that was more so like, um, how do you call yourself a high value guy or whatever it is type of guy you think you are, and you're normalizing trolling in the comments, especially towards a guest that was like sort of the main guest of that specific show. So it wasn't like I was just like the camera girl and you were just being a dick. It was just like purely just calculated. So for me, it was like, okay, well, I thought that was a little bit of a shitty move, and I've seen it consistently with his actions with other women. I think it just became like a nasty habit. And for me, it was one thing to call out like dumb broads. I think there's a lot of dumbass chicks on these shows, but like you have to be able to differentiate it. Like I can't sit here and assume that every guy in the red pill space is a piece of shit. I have to give them room to prove that they are a piece of shit before I assume that. And I don't see that same grace.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I kind of agree with what you said on Kyla, Not So Everdice channel, where like he could have handled that totally different. He was just like, yeah, I said what I said. I think you're fat. Sue me, right? That would have been like that
I
would
would
have
have owned it. I was like, yeah, so I'm a fat bitch. I'm gonna own that shit. But like
Well,
honestly,
but then like there wouldn't have been really much like there wouldn't have been any kind of a controversy because at that point he's just being rude. But that's like
yeah.
people are rude. But I think where you got him is the fact that he spent so long denying it. That's where you really were able to nail him. He's just like, oh, I don't know what I said. I mean, like like I talk a lot. I'm in a lot of chats. Like I think I said that she's a swell girl. She likes to party. I don't know. I don't know.
My thing is just like it goes back to I guess it when I first heard all these ideologies and these things that they would say, like, oh, women are emotional, men are logical. It's to a certain degree. I was like, oh yeah, women are emotional. Then you start to look and like, all right, fine, I challenge you because I love good challenges. I always get challenged all the time. And I'm like, all right, fine, I'm gonna be as logical as I can be in these spaces just to prove a point. And then once I'm being logical and I see that you're being emotional, that's where I lose complete faith. Like relationships are all about respect. And in any relationship, whether it's a relationship with your boss, your coworker, or your partner, I have to respect you. And if I don't respect you, that's going to be a big downfall in our relationship. So to me, when I'm talking to a guy or a girl and I don't respect you, like, you have no validity in anything you say, because now I'm going to have to own this conversation and you're going to have to shut the fuck up. And they don't like that because they're like, oh, you're supposed to be submissive. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be submissive to the person I'm sleeping with and spend the rest of my life with. I don't owe strangers that. So that's one thing that I've definitely learned. Like, I don't have to feel like shit because you're going to throw these little slanders because you can't find an actual argument with what I'm saying.
Well, you definitely got the last laugh in that situation. I will give you that. It's just so funny because I actually did a breakdown. I was reacting to this whole thing. That's when I first learned about you, and I was like, dude, like the whole thing. If he just owned it and was just like, yeah, I think you're overweight. It is what it is. It really would have been the end of the discussion, but you would have been like, oh, I just think you're rude or you're a dick then, and then that would have been. I mean, what you could have hit him on is like, oh yeah, well at least I don't get liposuctions. I don't know if you
I
knew
didn't
that.
know about any of that. Like, if I knew, I probably would have. But honestly, I think that would have made me look very, like, too calculated. Because for me, I had no idea what the plan were. I think at that moment, I had to say I was being a woman in that sense, where I was like, I guess we'll just figure out how this goes. We'll see. And I personally didn't really expect it to go down that way. And again, like, I didn't know, like, the host didn't know what was going on, because I think people gossip a lot in the space. But that really didn't play out the way I thought. So yeah, if I knew, I probably would have threw it and probably would have regretted saying that, because I don't know. I really don't believe in doubling down. I kind of feel like shit sometimes, but this is the space where you're supposed to be an asshole. So it's conflicting
Well, I
morally.
don't think you were an asshole. I don't think calling someone out who has personally insulted you, and like, because you weren't like being rude at first. You were just like, hey man, like, you talk about healthy habits, but you're talking shit in the chat and like kind of using petty insults. So I wouldn't consider it that. There's a conspiracy theory going around that the whole thing was like staged, which I think
Yeah.
is pure nonsense. But maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've confirmed it a couple of times, but to be fair, it's like I told everyone that if it was planned, or even like what Kyla said, if anyone ambushed him, it was definitely me, by definition. Ambushing, sure, I ambushed the shit out of him because I had my own thoughts. I'm like, why would you act this way? It's just a personal hate crime for no reason. But as far as like Adam and like Nat, like, I don't know if you noticed, like I've mentioned, like, her attitude was way off throughout the show. She was completely disconnected, and I've never seen her like that.
She does not like him. I could tell she does not
Well, it
like
wasn't
him.
even that she didn't. She usually she would maintain frame and just act like, whatever, composure. But after six hit pieces, it was more so like she wanted to confront him, is what I found out. And when that show came that day, it was too many girls on the panel, so they made her sit on the side laptop. So if her and I knew what was going on, she would have had a better attitude, knowing that I was going to confront him. But because we both didn't know what the plan were, because I'd only spoken to her like 2 weeks prior, that's it was like she was frustrated because she couldn't get her point across, and then she didn't want to put the pressure on me. But I'm a little bit barbaric in my mind, and I was like, I'm gonna attack the situation, and then it just came out like that. So
It,
yeah.
it went too perfect for it to be staged. Like if something is staged, it's just gonna feel fake. It felt like almost like okay, this is just like because he was denying it, and then the funniest part was you're like, dude, you said that I'm 30, 40 pounds overweight, and as soon as your
Yeah.
mind was like, oh yeah, I did say that. Like, and I was like, dude, so why were you playing dumb the whole time? You spent 10 minutes playing
I mean,
dumb.
anyone who watches like Crime Watchers or anything that watches how like people act when they are guilty, you would know based on the position the person was sitting in and the answers and the face color and the storming out, even though everyone says he wasn't storming out. But just like the auntie grandma walk of like when he like stomped off the stage. Like, if you can't see these things, that's fine. If you want to be like in denial, that's okay. Like, bat for your king, white knight it all the way out. But let's be real. Like, if the roles were reversed, it would be completely like, what is it, Frank Castling? Like, it would have been like she Frank Castled herself. So it's just funny that this happens all the time on these other shows. No one says anything. It's like 4 guys versus one dumb girl. And even all those other girls are there. No girl ever speaks up. Like, they just pretty much allow it to happen because
But
no
to
one's
be
ever.
fair, he got absolutely destroyed on the internet after that incident. Like he wasn't spared on the count of being a man. Like he got. I mean, dude, I wasn't the only channel that roasted him. There's like a million channels that were roasting him. So he got it pretty bad. Here's another question I have. What happened? Like, okay, so he leaves. Show ultimately ends. What happened after the show? Did you guys talk about it, or was there any kind of
No,
like
no, no.
thing
We
from
didn't talk because he stormed off to go to that other one in Miami.
No, I
Because
mean like between you and Adam and the other girls.
I mean, nothing, honestly. Like, Adam's usually always pretty mutual. Like, he's always never really wanted to pick sides, which is understandable. He's consistent about that. Um, so for him, it was like him and I have a fairly healthy relationship. Like, he's respects me and he's normal
Yeah,
with
he's a good
me.
dude. Mhm.
Yeah, so it's like he wasn't more like I'm gonna pick your side at Melody, and I didn't even expect that. And then like the other girls had other stuff to do, so we kind of just all went separately, just went home, and then we just kind of let it fizzle out to whatever the internet did.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was wondering if like as soon as the podcast ended, you guys are all sitting and you look at each other, you start laughing, you're like,
Oh, no, we didn't really, because so it was my first time talking to Melina, which is Destiny's wife, or
"Huh?"
Steven's wife. I don't know what the internet calls him. And I hadn't spoken to her in like almost a year. And
Mhm.
my first interaction with her was with also Kyla, and it was like really awkward because I was super, super red pill,
Mhm.
and just the way that I was raised. So I didn't agree with people's lifestyle, so I would shame them. So that was one thing that I definitely regretted. So I immediately was like in like apologetic mode with her, and I was like, "Hey, I just want to know, like, I really apologize for the way I acted." So I was in the middle of trying to fix that while the whole MLD shit was happening afterwards. So it was a little like not really on my mind because I didn't really think it was a big deal. I thought it was a huge thing, but I didn't realize the huge impact of it until the internet. And then I was like, holy crap, this is huge. So
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if it was just that incident in isolation, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But it was the fact that the endure clip was going around. And
yeah.
I like how you made a little joke about it. I guess I should just endure this. I like those one liners. So there was that going around, and the screenshots that happened pre-release. So it was just like it was a culmination of things, and then like that was just kind of the crescendo.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question. What are your views on Jebediah Bila giving MLD platform on channel on two occasions, not holding to account? What are your thoughts on that?
See, that's another problem I have, like, with people in that space. So, again, like, with Jedediah, like, she's super, like, red pill-y, I guess, like, conservative. I heard before she wasn't, and again, I think, like, once you dive into the space, you become super tunnel vision, and I think, like, she's not able to compartmentalize and see, like, you're platforming a dork that basically does all these things that you kinda stand against, and I think it's just because her personal relationship with him of, like, "Oh, we're great friends, we support each other, we tweet each other," but I just think it's crazy that no one like no you don't denounce it anything. It's kind of lame, honestly. So super disappointing.
Mm. Yeah, I'm pro platforming dorks as long as you call out their behavior, right? So I think anyone should be entitled to have a voice if people want to see it. But yeah, like if I was like interviewing MLD, I would definitely push back on a lot of fucking shit. So if you're just like agreeing, yeah, I'm actually going to be on Jebediah, I think, in a few weeks, so I can actually probably discuss that with her. We'll see what she says. Uh, Value Tatum, if you're watching this, I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna be friendly. It's gonna be good content. Don't worry. All right, this is another interesting question. Are you sure MLD's career is over as far as I can see he's still on YouTube selling his courses? So yes and no. So it's not like over, meaning like he's totally gone, right? But I think like not a lot of podcasts are going to bring him on except for his friends after this. Especially with I think the real thing that fucked him is the screenshots that came out showing that he has a tendency to be violent towards women. That's the biggest fucking thing out of all those incidents. I think his courses will sell a lot less. I think people won't take him seriously. I think his diehard fans will continue buying his course and supporting him, but you can't really grow just with your diehard fans. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I find it hard to believe that you could grow with a past like that that's been heavily exposed. I mean, if you do, then I'm really worried about the type of people that look up to that content. Unless you're willing to admit how terribly wrong you are and that you could grow from your mistakes, which I haven't terribly seen that, to be really honest. So I don't really know how he's able to and if he's possible to thrive like that. But I mean, maybe people really aren't that smart out there. Maybe they like that stuff.
Yeah, there's just like diehard fans who will not abandon you. Like you could have a video of MLD like taking a ball and hitting a girl on the head, and they'd be like, "Oh, bro, I mean, like I think she's a Hollywood actress. Like, it just felt a little too, he didn't really hit her that hard. I mean, like, it's more of like a friendly tap, like." So you're gonna have like the diehard fans who will just like support you no matter what happens. But relatively speaking, they're not like a big community. Also, I think as much as I fucking hate this dude, Saint and Sinner, who I think is probably even a bigger douchebag than MLD, I will give him respect for completely annihilating MLD in the thing that they did. And the funny thing is, MLD was actually right. Like I actually researched this a little bit, and there's actually proof that what's his name, fucking
The Cinegram, Marquess,
yeah, Saint and
Marquise.
Sinner did a
Yeah.
coin rug pull, right? So that actually did happen, but he wasn't able to just like defend his argument at all, and it just came off
Yeah.
like a bad look. Which is funny. He was right, but he looked like he was wrong.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, I think it takes a slime ball to take another slime ball down. Like I've always like I don't know, like somebody wanted me to like continue exposing the conversation him and I had, and I was like, I don't really feel like feeding into the situation because it brings more fuel. And to be really honest, I don't really want to be known as that girl for that situation. So I was like, I'll just let it sizzle down. Like I'm sure things will kill itself. Like I'm a hard believer in like I don't need to do these type of I don't need to be the one that's crucifying you. You'll do it yourself because of your bad habits. So looking at that pattern with him, it was nice to see another slime ball within the space challenge him with that because it was like you can't hold anyone accountable when you're both like kind of
Yeah,
garbage.
the slime balls are fighting with each other. You're a slime here. No, you're a slime.
You're a slime. You're a slime. It was
You're the
like kind of
slime. Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. I
Yeah.
challenged Saint and Sinner to a debate, and he emailed me saying that he wants $1,600 an hour for a debate, which is the most absurd thing ever. First, I have more subs than him, so like that wouldn't even make sense. And second of all, like what, like the actual fuck? Like I could never imagine Destiny being like, yeah, Alex, if you want to come on my channel and debate me, you have to pay me $2,000 an hour. Like this is the dorkiest fucking move ever. So I had very little respect for him even before that, but now that respect is like in the negatives right now. I want to ask you one more question on this before we move on to
Sure.
I guess the portion of the debate. So I heard you say on Kyle's channel. I just want to see if this is like if maybe I'm misunderstanding or is this true.
Yeah.
So he really did apologize to you afterwards. Did that happen?
It was a half-assed apology. It was like I'm not gonna take accountability, but we can make a public. Oh wait, no. I could do a virtual one-on-one with you, and then I was like, no, we can do this publicly since it started publicly. If you don't want to do that, then I'm good. And he was like, oh well, I think you're trying to clout chase. I'm like, no, I'm not clout chasing. If you slap me publicly, you're gonna say sorry to
My
me.
man, you have no clout. You can't clout chase
Yeah.
someone who has no clout.
So to me, it was like, no, like I think that's stupid. It's like I'm not gonna be anywhere near your perimeter if you're gonna act this way. Like I would look stupid befriending you after how you acted throughout this whole thing. I have no problem. I have all types of friends, diverse backgrounds. Like it's not a big deal. But more so, it's just like you wanted me to respect how you came about all of this, and it took like I think 2 days later for the virtual, like wanting to do the virtual thing. I was like, dude, I have my week set up. I'm not going to, like change my plans around just because you decide you want to apologize publicly now. It's a little past that. So
Yeah, fun fact that a lot of people don't know. He actually privately apologized to me a while back. Not that I asked him for it. It was so it happened after my whole thing with John Anthony happened. I know that MLD has like an ongoing lawsuit with John Anthony. So he emailed me and reached out to me. He's like, dude, we got to talk. And so I like one night, I was like chilling with my girlfriend. We're a little high. It was like 2 a.m. You know, it's going to be funny. Let's fucking hear what this dork has to say. And he just basically went on a 20-minute tangent. But, I will give him credit. He did apologize. And then I actually tried to set up a debate with him between him and Tom Foolery. I know you know who that is because we're going to be on the panel together next week. I mean, tomorrow. And he was like, hey, bro, I heard that you talk negatively about me in one of your streams. So therefore, I would like to cut off contact with you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. I was like, all right, bro. It's like overly formal. You know what I mean? Like for someone who's like just like not a professional to be overly professional. This is gonna be the last question on this because I think it's an interesting question. Do you think MLD paid Sando Sinner so that he could have that collab? What do you think about that?
I'm gonna say no, just because I think like Saint Sinner had his own motives behind it. I think if it was probably like nothing, that he probably would have. But being that Saint Sinner saw like an easy bait, so he probably didn't have to.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 on that one. Honestly,
for your experience, which is understandable. Fair enough.
Playing with fire. Would you call out Saint Sinner for crypto and situation and proof? Yes, and yes, if that debate ever happens. But I'm not going to pay him $1 to debate me. Okay, I'm not going to contribute $1 to his fucking life. But if he actually mans up and debates me, then yes, I will totally do that. But it seems like he doesn't want to. Are you reporting on the Hunter Avalon drama? I've talked about on Tom Foolery's channel. That one, it's not that I don't want to talk about it, but that one I feel kind of bad because it's very personal. I mean, it's like, dude, they have kids together. It's like, if the claim is true, then she's cheating on him with a bunch of dudes, and like, I don't know, that one seems to me like very personal, and it just kind of makes me sad a little bit. But I have talked about it. I'll talk about it, but I don't feel like I should make a video on that, if that makes sense. Are you familiar with this?
No, I don't really keep up with internet stuff unless it involves me. But I've seen that name, but I don't really know what's going on with that.
Oh yeah, well you're not missing much. But anyway, okay, so let's get into the debate portion. So I got your email pull up. Okay, the first point you made, I disagree with probably 90% of Pearl's beliefs, if that helps. Could you expand a little bit on which beliefs you disagree with?
Well, okay, she said that divorces should be banned or something. Like women's was it repeal the 19th or something?
No forced divulge should be removed.
I literally don't agree with anything she says because I don't think she thought it through as a woman's point of view. Like I don't agree with the aftermath, a lot of these bad things that happen, but we should actually talk about like why they happen. I don't think she focuses on that enough. So she just goes straight to just banning everything, which I'm like, girl, are you stupid? Like respectfully, like what is this? So I would have to say her ideas on what relationships look like as to like if you don't want to divorce and you shouldn't get married, who goes into a marriage thinking about divorce? Like, let's be realistic here. So I don't understand the motive behind that. So I don't think a lot of people are capable to be in a relationship or to be married, but I'm not against marriage.
Probably agree with that. But you would agree that it's a good idea for successful men to get prenups, right, before getting married?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think we actually have much disagreement on this point. Yeah, I think the idea of like not allowing, you're basically having the like, what would that look like? So you and your wife hate each other. The government comes in, the police comes in and says, "Hey, you have to sleep in the same bed as your wife." But I really just hate her. I can't stand her. You guys are legally married, and you guys have to spend time together. Like the government's going to force people to stay together. It seems like such a massive overreach. The funny thing is, a lot of like red pillars and people in that space, they're libertarians, so they believe in like less government. But then when it comes to things that benefit them, they're all about like more government. You know,
Right,
at
right.
the end of the day, not allowing divorce is more government. That's not less government. Is there anything else specifically that she says that you disagree with?
Honestly, my brain just goes away whenever she starts talking because I don't I you'd have to point out something because every time she starts talking, let's see, what did I say? She says that women are comfortable with sharing men of high value, I think. Is that what she says?
I don't know if she says that. I know Fresh and Fit says that. Okay, I'll give you my take on that. You can tell me if you
Okay.
agree or disagree. I think that generally speaking, women prefer to have a man exclusively. I think if a guy's high value, women are more likely to make an exception and share him. Well, not every girl will, but some girls are more likely to make an exception. But if they have their preference is to have him to herself. That's the preference of the vast majority of girls.
Right. Yes, I agree with that. But then, like, when you say that, it's like, oh, we don't speak about the exception and all that shit. So it's almost pointless to talk about that because I think like the reality is who wants to share their man. Um, yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of hard. I didn't even realize what we were gonna disagree on about. Shit. I should have watched that H3 podcast all
No,
over
you're good.
again.
You're good. You gave me a shitload of points, so we can just move on to the next one because there's going to be
Okay.
stuff that you said that we explicitly disagree with. I'm just going to go through these in order. I'm
Sure.
against hookup culture, men and women. So can you explain that?
I think like okay, my biggest problem with hookup culture is if you want to do it, make sure you date someone that's within hookup culture and make sure that your values align with another chick that you're going to be with long term. I think the problem with people engaging to hookup culture because it's just easier. They get they're unhappy with the results of not finding someone who probably doesn't want someone who slept around and engaged into hookup culture. That's my biggest problem with it, and I think the same thing for men. Because a lot of these people will say like it's it for men. I think men do need to have a little bit more experience than women. I wouldn't say like 50 bodies, with that being said, I think it's important to recognize that the more women you sleep with, the more you're just going to be very cynical and assume that every chick is that easy and you could steal everyone's wife, everyone's girlfriend, and side chick. So it's like the probability of you being more empathetic in a relationship after sleeping with everyone's girl is probably going to be very slim to none. So,
Okay, interesting. So let's kind of explore some of these points one by one.
sure.
It sounds like you're not against hookup culture. You're just not against people being deceptive to have casual sex. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's tough because it's like I don't care what anyone does. It just has to make sense. Like if you want to be a weirdo, be a weirdo. If you want to do that, do that. I don't care what you do. Just make sure it makes sense for what you're asking for.
So, like for example, you find out that like one of your friends is having casual sex. The guy's honest, she's honest. You don't actually have any kind of inherent ethical problem with that.
I wouldn't care as long as, let's say, like for me, if I actually sat down and asked her what she wanted in a relationship long term, like, what do you want? Oh, I want a guy who's more traditional, who's going to wine and dine me, who's going to do, who doesn't care about my past. That's where I step in, like, okay, well, that's not going to work. You want some, I don't know, some materialistic douchebag who's probably going to be like flashing his lifestyle and he wants you to be all pure and virgin. That's not going to happen because you slept through the zip code. So that's not realistic. Like, make sure your values align with whoever you're trying to be with.
Yes, but honestly, the dating marketplace is so skewed that even if a girl has 100 bodies, there's going to be plenty of traditional men who will still take and overlook that just because how skewed the dating marketplace is. I think pretty much like the only thing a girl can do to kill her chances of finding a boyfriend is dying. Like if you're alive, like you can be overweight. We've done experiments. We took photos of a really obese girl. We're talking 300 pounds. Created a Tinder profile for her. She got something like 500 matches in 24 hours. We
Mhm,
used photos of my mom, who's not that old. Mom's 55. We used FaceApp to make her like 85. Created a Tinder
mhm.
profile for her. She had 1,000 likes in 48 hours. And some of these guys, like you might think, oh, these guys are probably losers. Some of these guys were decent looking, successful, And they were like, literally, we engaged with them and they were like willing to drive over and like have sex with my AI mom, right? Or hang out with her. So I think that yes, your odds do go down. Like if you're looking for a traditional guy and you have a lot of casual sex, your odds do go down, but your odds are still so high that I probably wouldn't worry about it if I was like advising a girl.
I can understand what you're saying, but my thing with that, yes, on the surface of that, it sounds successful, but I'd like to see those actual relationships play out because I'd say like there's a difference between a guy finding the convenience of sex for a chick and actually wanting to be in a relationship with her, and take her seriously. So yeah, maybe they were willing to drive and sleep with the AI version of your mom, but I'd like to see them actually treat her with the same fairness they would as a, like a girl that they find value in.
Yeah, so I think definitely some guys like okay, let me kind of pose the question like this. What percentage of men do you think will refuse to date a girl who has a high body count? Let's just I don't know, let's pick a number. Let's pick like 50 or something like that, right? What percentage of men do you think will refuse to date a girl if everything else is good because she has a body count of over 50?
Um, okay, I'm sorry. Maybe not the body count. I guess like the hoe tendencies. I don't think the number actually matters. I think that when you're carrying yourself as a girl who's been in the streets, is I don't know if that's the same in your opinion or if
No,
that's
no,
like
I see your point. But the thing, like your body count, you can't change, but your sexual experience, you can't change. But how you carry yourself, you can totally change. A girl can go from like carrying herself like a hoe to carrying herself like a lady, you know.
don't you think those things kind of linger around that maybe like it's like I mean you're probably gonna sleep with someone that's in the zip code or someone within your perimeter. So it's like you can't really hide the fact that maybe let's say I went to date like my neighbor and then found out my neighbor, his friends, and then his friends' friends and his cousins are aware of who I slept with, and it's been people that are in the same area. Wouldn't that affect the relationship when if let's say you're not secure?
Yeah, if you're living in a small town, then sure. But in a big city, the chances of people finding out is going to be so small. Like in a big city like Miami, New York, LA, it's just too many people.
See,
It's just
Miami's big, but even then, Miami has its communities. Like you have Brickell downtown, Edgewater, and even then, I think people know people, which is kind of how the world works in that same way. Like even with social media, when you see like mutuals, people know of each other. Like immediately, if you and I knew Tom Foolery, you know, we knew,
but to be
Kyla.
fair, we're part of a very much smaller sub community, which is like Redpill podcasters. Like our community is way
Okay,
slower than the smaller than the general dating community.
fair enough. All right, I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think like, I mean, there's been situations where like my friend hooks up with a girl. I'm like, oh shit, I know her. I went on a date with her like fucking a month ago, right? But I
Right.
also think that once you're at a point where a guy's in a relationship with a girl, his friends could say whatever. He's just gonna backwards rationalize. He's like, no, 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 you guys don't understand her. Like I think most of the time, unless there's something explicit like cheating, but like most of the time when a guy's in a relationship with a girl and guys are like, hey, actually, 5 years ago she used to be kind of a hoe. Me and Johnny banged her. He's gonna be like, well, she's changed. She's not like that anymore. So I think most guys will still find ways to do backwards gymnastics.
Actually, no, I'd have to agree with you on that. I think it, yes, I think there's the reason why I would disagree and agree at the same time. It's just a problem of finding someone that's secure enough to not feel insecure after hearing your friends, your neighbors, your buddies say like she's been around and she slept around. So I mean, if the guy is secure enough, which I don't really see many people that secure in this day and age, guys or girls, to have that confidence to be like, no, like I carry myself different. Her past is her past, but this is with me here now. I don't see how that's like the probability of it. Maybe I could be wrong. I also don't know the stats on that, so it's really
Well,
comment.
I do think a girl's past matters in a way, right? Like if like every girl I've ever been in a serious relationship has had a body count of like under 15, right? Not because I deliberately seek for that, it's just kind of the way it's turned out. But yeah, if I find out my girlfriend has a body count of like 100 or 200, that'll make me very, very apprehensive, right? Just simply for, because it's not because of the body counts, what that body count means. So if a girl has a super high body count, it generally means that she's either very, very novelty driven. She craves novelty, which you're gonna have a hard time delivering that unless you're having like orgies and stuff like that. Or the second thing is she seeks validation and she gets validation through sex. Neither one of those is essentially a good quality for a partner. So I do think the past matters, but I do think I'm somewhat unique. Like from what I've seen, most guys will just ignore like literally every single red flag. Like I had a dude on what was it 2 days ago? Really cool dude. He has the channel anti-profit, and he was talking about his first marriage and all the red flags that he ignored. And this is not like a bad looking dude, this is not like an awkward dude, this is like a pretty cool person. He was saying that like something along the lines of like she would actually like beat him or stuff like that, or like sexually abuse him. I don't know, like crazy fucking over the top shit. And he was like, yeah, I just ignored that until it got to a point where she like fucked my friend, at which point I couldn't really ignore that.
No, actually, no, I agree with you on people do settle in reality. I think like the hard part is maybe I'm looking at it from the perspective like what the red pill has done and made it such a big thing. As far as like dating, they've made the dating market a little bit confusing because it's like, all right, I want her to be this, I want that, I want this. And I'm like, isn't it like one in three men are virgins? So it's like if you're a virgin, I don't think your priority should be worrying about how many people she slept with. It should be worrying about can you sleep with her at least. But I guess like after seeing the impacts that it's done on people, that's why me personally, I think it just makes it a lot harder when it comes to the reason. One of the main reasons why I'm so against it is that generally I know like women want to be in a relationship, and if you want to be in a relationship and you're used to sleeping around with guys, eventually it's confusing on who actually is sleeping with you out of convenience or who wants to be with you for a relationship. And it's hard to differentiate because they're kind of all swaying you in ways where it seems like he's interested in you, and then you're going to find in the long term maybe he's not interested in you, maybe you're just convenient.
Yeah, but my counters to that would be a lot of red pillars like to LARP around and pretend like they want this pure girl, but their actions are complete opposite. Like, let's take this is a funny story. So, are you familiar with Michael Sartain?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so he was talking how basically he brought this girl onto the Fresh and Fit podcast, and she was just being roasted by the chat. Everyone was going in on her, saying like, "Oh, this is the worst. This chick represents everything we hate." And then after the podcast, within 48 hours, she got like 1,000 OnlyFans subscribers. So
Um,
the same dudes who are shitting on this girl, calling her like a 304 or whatever, saying she's a bitch, a lot of them are subscribing. I mean, if Fresh and Fit audience is probably 10,000 live viewers, so that means 10% of the people who are hating on the girl actually paid her money to jerk off to her. Another situation would be like Fresh, for example, right? Constantly talk about like, oh, you got to avoid these 304s. Who does he wind up dating? A girl that he meets on Seeking at a boat, a girl who's like, literally is basically all the things he says they hate. So I
right.
just look at those patterns and I see like these guys literally almost entirely always do the opposite of what they say. So therefore, they may say they want this pure girl, but that's not what their actions reflect.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't think there's anything to argue about that. I definitely noticed the hypocrisy in the space with that. Um, yeah, I guess we don't disagree on the whole hookup thing. Then I guess like what you're saying makes sense. Uh, I guess it's just I find it hard to believe that like let's say like I'm from Tampa, so like a local Tampa girl is probably like out of 10 girls, maybe there's like really three hot girls. Three hot girls are probably known to be out partying, the fun girl. And I think like the average guy would kind of be not interested in dating those girls just because it's like it's intimidating to know that she's probably slept with a lot of other people that maybe have higher status, more money, whatever it
Wait, why
is.
would there be three hot girls in Tampa? It's a big city. There's like thousands of hot girls there.
Well, let me say hot. When I say like when I say hot, I'm just saying in my specific anecdotal situation. Let's say there's three girls I know that are really hot out of our circle, our
Oh,
group.
you personally? Okay, got it.
Yes. So out of the three girls I know that are extremely like hot, you're comparing them to like, the other girls who are just like average, not unattractive, not just whatever. I find like that situation, those girls are seeked and desired, but then it's a little bit complicated because the guys that they want personality wise won't align with what they're actually getting all the time. And that's where like I kind of agree with the red pill because I know the type of guys that those girls are exposed to. But then
Oh.
you want like the good guy personality with the asshole confidence. That's
Yeah, kind of like a unicorn. I do agree that like having lots of casual sex for a lot of women is very unfulfilling. I think some amount of casual experience can be good. Like I don't think it's a good idea to marry the first person you sleep with, right? Because I think that at that point you just don't have enough base of experience,
right,
right?
right.
So I would never advocate for that. But I think that yeah, if a girl just goes year after year just having nonstop casual sex, never gets in a relationship, I do generally think that's unfulfilling. Not for every girl. There's some small exceptions. There's a small percentage of girls who just love nothing more than to get dicked out. Like that's their thing. They're truly happy. They don't give a fuck, right? Yeah, but that's a small percentage of girls. I do think
Yeah.
for a lot of girls, I think with guys, it's a smaller percentage, but it's still a good amount of men would find just nonstop casual sex unfulfilling. The question is, what do they do when they get to that point? Like myself, using myself as an example, I mean, I did nothing, pretty much nothing but casual sex in my 20s. I was like going through girl after girl. And, I had some relationships here and there. And then when I got to about like 31, I just kind of got a little bored of casual sex. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get into a relationship now. Right. So a lot of guys and girls will do kind of that, which is where basically they have casual sex until it no longer brings them happiness. And then they get into relationships. Right. But, not everyone does. I guess you can just not do that. But to me, that's like the common sense thing. Like if you're enjoying something, you can do it. But then if you no longer enjoy it, then don't do it. But I guess there's other reasons why women will have sex. Like I mentioned, validation seeking behavior, not simply because they enjoy it. So I guess, yeah, her reason for having casual sex matters. Is she doing this to just try to trap a guy? Is she doing this to get emotional validation, or is she doing this because she legitimately enjoys getting fucked by a bunch of dudes?
Yeah, I don't see many women actually having the idea that she just wants to get railed by a bunch of randos. And I don't know. I would say generally, if I could speak on that behalf, I think like if a girl sleeps with a guy, she more than likely wants to be in a relationship with him in some form of way, build that relationship, whether it's friendship to be in an actual relationship. I don't really see women just being able to compartmentalize like, oh, he has a good body, but his personality is shit, but I'm still gonna sleep with him because he's a good body. I don't really see that happening too much because you're hoping to God that maybe he'll be a better guy for the relationship. So just
Yeah, fucking a lot of dudes is typically not the sexual strategy for most single girls. So the sexual strategy that I think most single girls will employ, if they're like, hey, I don't want to get into a relationship for whatever reason, I want to be single, they'll typically get like 2 or 3 friends with benefits. Because every time a girl meets up with a new guy, there's a safety risk, right? Even though it may not be substantial in her mind, she's like, shit, I'm taking a chance. There's a chance that he's going to suck in bed. There's going to be a chance he's going to have STDs. There's a chance he's going to be awkward, right? So there's all kinds of chances that girl is taking. So typically, like the strategy will be like, yeah, I'm going to find like 2 or 3 guys. I'm not going to tell them about each other. I'm going to hook up with them until I eventually wind up either dating one of them or I wind up dating someone else. I think that's a more common strategy. There is a small percentage of girls, and I would say normal populations, maybe 1%, Miami's maybe 5 or 10%, that like actually like enjoy this. Like I remember I met this girl once, this was like 5 years ago. She was 21, she had a body count of 300. It was insane. Like we were laying in bed and like her phone was just getting blown the fuck up. Like it's just like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? And I was like, ooh, good thing I wore a condom with this one.
oh
But
my God.
the point is like I kind of asked her about it and it seemed like she legitimately was just like, I love to get fucked. I like the variety. But yeah, there's a small percentage of girls. I will definitely
Right. No, I agree with that. Okay. That'd be a funny ass clip to cut. Okay.
All right, so let me move on. Let me move on to the other thing you said, which is that
Yes.
um, guys who fuck a lot of girls are going to be cynical and less empathetic. I guess I can't give you any kind of like studies on this. I can just give you some anecdotal experience, which is something. Like I would say with me, I fuck like hundreds and hundreds of girls, but I don't feel like I'm more cynical or less empathetic than the average guy. In fact, I would say I personally think that I'm more empathetic than the average person. I think that I don't feel like having a lot of casual sex made me more empathetic or sorry, less empathetic or more cynical.
I think that maybe it is anecdotal because I think that you're aware of the female nature. I think some people have high hopes, so maybe do the right thing in a relationship, but then they get screwed by their first girl. Then they just go off a rampage, probably find their physique or themselves, they start peaking. And I would say like after that, you find girls that are attractive, but maybe she has like super vanilla personality traits. But then like, I think that people do a lot of this build-a-bear idea of like, I like this, but I hate this. I love this, but I hate that. And then you end up just kind of just sleeping just to fill up that void that maybe it'll, kind of fulfill for you as a man. And I could be wrong, but from what I've noticed, like I've seen a lot of the pandering. That's why a lot of in my mind gravitate towards the red pill stuff because it kind of feeds you what you feel like you're going through, which is like women all suck, women all this, women are gold diggers. But in reality, it's just the type of girl you want isn't in the right place that you're looking for, and then the ones that you can get aren't the wifey you want, but it's like convenient. I think that just kind of conflates everything for them, and that's what I would say where the cynical hookup stuff comes from.
But to be fair, you can't really sleep with a lot of girls if you hate women or you think girls suck, because that's going to be transparent in how you communicate with them. Like, in order to sleep with a lot of girls, you need to have good game. You need to have good mindsets, right? And like, if you think women are trash, yeah, you'll sleep with some girls, but that will naturally come up during the course of the date, and you will say something that the girl will be like, "Whoa, like it seems like you're just kind of bitter or pissed off." So I think all that stuff just like shines through. Like sometimes if it's like a quick date, you can maybe pull it off, but in like these situations where you're on a 2 hour multiple date with a girl, like you're gonna say something that's gonna fuck you over.
Yes, but maybe I think there's different subsections of men. Like you have the ones that, probably will date a lot of girls and just kind of find the one that he's looking for. And it's like, I want this innocent idea of like her not being trampled to the world. And then maybe just there's some guys in my mind, like you seem like you're very aware of like female nature and exactly what you're looking for. But I don't really know that some people are looking, they know what they're looking for. That they have this idea where like, um, how do I say this? Like women will, what is it? It's always like women will date the assholes, but then neglect the betas is what they would say. But it's really we like the confidence in the assholes, but we like the innocence in the beta, but we should get both. I would have to say,
Right, yeah,
you know what I mean? And I
yeah.
think
No,
like, right. And then with men, I think like for some part of it, it's like somebody who's like, oh, I don't want a girl with too much experience, but you at least want her to know how to give you head at least, dude. Like, you don't want to teach her everything, do you? And
Well,
some of these
some
guys,
guys actually want a girl who's a straight up virgin.
yeah, I don't understand that. I don't understand
Yeah,
like that.
I don't get it either. I don't get it either. I'll be honest with you. I think it comes down to one of two things: either religious beliefs or insecurity. I mean, if you watch like some of these like red pill streams, like Donovan Sharp, for example, he's talking about, and it's funny because these guys literally do the exact opposite of what they say. But he was talking about, he's like, if my girl sleeps with a lot of guys, I mean, she's probably fucked guys who have bigger dicks than me. I can't compete with like a 10-inch cock. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way I could compete with that. I mean, that's like straight up like fucking insecurity. The ironic thing is that he publicly admits this, is that his wife had a high body count when they met. So I don't. It's like a massive contradiction. But yeah, it's like I do think it comes from insecurity or it comes from religious beliefs. I think one of those two.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But okay, so let me outline my strategy for relationships for you, and you kind of give me your 2 cents on it. I actually did a video about this about a week ago. So my strategy is a little bit of unorthodox. This is what I believe. If you're a guy, you want to get in a relationship, you should cast a really, really wide net, right? While screening out for things you don't want. So, for example, you want to be in a relationship with a girl who works a lot, then don't even bother going on a date with her. But cast a really wide net, go out with a lot of girls, sleep with a lot of girls, because I think the biggest mistake you can make as a guy getting into a relationship is get into that relationship so that you can get laid. And this is something that happens to a lot of guys. They're like, okay, and it's all subconscious, not conscious, but it's like, okay, well, if I date this girl, she'll sleep with me. I really want to get laid. It's been like half a year for me, so I'm just going to date her, right? But for me, dating, like this, getting laid plays zero role in my decision to date the girl because I'm already sleeping with the girl. So I think that's a much healthier footing. And then you can actually see, is there something more than just wanting to get laid that makes this girl interesting to you? Like, if you've hung out with her, like my current girlfriend, we hung out for like a year before we started dating, or a year and a half. Like, clearly at that point, I'm like, okay, there's, I already got laid. I already fucked her like a million times. There's other things about her that make her appeal to me. And I think that once you pick from a place of abundance like that, and you can actually really search for like qualities that matter to you. Like for me, I would say intelligence is an important one. I don't want a girl who's a dumb bimbo. Honesty, integrity, similar values, being family oriented. Those are things that have like always been important to me. So those are like the things I will screen for once I'm fucking a girl to see if she's going to get to a relationship level. So yeah, that's like kind of my, I guess my strategy for dating. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's 10 ways to skin a cat. A terrible analogy being that I'm Asian, but anyways, I think that
I didn't even think of that, but yeah.
yeah, I think that is that is a way to do that. I agree. Believe it or not, controversial, but I think again, as a man, you have the discipline to understand what your goals and what your method and your strategy is. I think that's like a madman madness type of strategy to be able to understand, because some people could, hypnotize themselves, like, this is not that bad. I actually don't mind being abused from time to time. But I think that that definitely works. At the same time, I think, let's see, what was the other method I was thinking about as you were saying that? I also don't think there's ever really a wrong time to sleep with the right person. So, I mean, when it comes to like dating, I think people whether wait too long and then just to find out they're terrible and better, there's no chemistry or compatibility. But I think that's up to the person to build their own value. So I guess, like, again, it goes back to you seeming like you kind of know who you are and what you want. You seem like you're old enough to get there. But I'm not sure if somebody that's like 21, 22, 23 heard that they could actually absorb that and figure out like if this is just for fun or is this serious? Like, what am I doing here? Because they're just like at that moment just enjoying the sex that they have within themselves or the person.
Yeah, I just think one of the biggest things for men is picking from a place of abundance and not scarcity. And I would
Agreed.
say that like 98% of 99% of men in relationships picked from a place of scarcity, or at least semi-scarcity. Maybe it's not 99, maybe it's like 80 or 90%. But the point is, it's the majority of men. And like, they don't even like, this is a funny like little experiment. Like, you ask a couple, like, hey, so you ask a guy, sorry, when the wife is not there, you ask a guy, hey, so what made you decide to marry her? And the answer is always something like, I don't know, like the sex was good, or she doesn't like, she's patient, she lets me do my thing. But basically the reason is a negative. It's like something like, yeah, like it's a very basic reason. I could just never imagine marrying a girl because, oh no, she lets me hit it and she like kind of lets me like do my YouTube thing. It's like, no, there's got to be strong reasons, but a lot of these guys don't because they're in such a place of scarcity. So I think the best place to get into a point of abundance is to actually go out there and meet a lot of girls. But the only way you could do that is if you have game, right? Because the top, like the highest quality girls, they're going to be more selective than low quality girls because they have a lot of options. There's a lot of guys who want to date them. They're probably better looking. And so you're going to need more game, I think, to get with those girls than you would with a girl who's like lower quality, who will just fuck anything and everyone. And so, like, that's, you have to get to that point. But if you're picking from a place of scarcity where you're like, you don't really have any game, you're just taking what you can get, like, I just don't see that relationship working well, like 9 out of 10 times.
I agree with that. Picking from a place of abundance and not scarcity. When you say game, what do you mean exactly? Is that something that you
like social skills, basically?
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of hard to disagree with you. I'm having a really hard time with my place in my life right now, finding disagreements with like you, like Destiny, like
I'm
Kyla.
just too based. I'm too based.
I think so. Like I'm having such a hard time. I mean, I really just heavily disagree with like the one Redpill guy I was just talking with, but like I don't know. I guess with people who kind of understand their life and their direction, it's like you could speak broadly, but also you can narrow it down to like just how simple things like you're saying, like to have game and also to be in a place of an abundance, which I can't even argue with you with that because like logically, obviously it makes sense, but I don't know if most people can even get to that. That's my struggling point dealing with like I have very low expectations and standards for the reality of most people because it's
me too. Yeah. I agree with you. Most people cannot get it. This is a ideal, and this is an ideal. This is not like the reality for a lot of men. I mean, men could do it, but most men won't. Just like most people could become financially independent, but most people won't, right? So yeah,
right.
for sure, the average guy is like probably not going to do this, right? This is a small percentage of men. But again, my advice is centered for a small percentage of men who are like driven to improve. So at the very least, I'll kind of give them the ideal and see if they can make it. But don't worry, we're going to get to a few things where I think we'll have a stronger disagreement on. I'm just going to use order. But yeah, I think also that's a cool thing about debate is that you can like sometimes online may seem like you guys totally disagree. But I've had this happen countless times where I got together with someone who it seemed like I disagree a lot with on the surface. And you're not in this category, just other people. And it turns out we agree on like 95%.
Right. Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle.
All right, so let me move on to the next thing. Men and women need to adapt masculine and feminine qualities to thrive in a relationship. Can you expand on that?
Wait. What did I say? Say that again.
Yeah, the exact quote is men and women need to adapt masculine and feminine qualities to thrive in a relationship.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, based in the whole red pill space, this idea that a man can lead the entire relationship in all aspects. I think it's important to recognize like men and women, I think, and believe that men and women are different but the same in ways where like we both have masculine and feminine features, but we also have to recognize like what our strengths are. And I think like most people don't embrace that. They have this idea that I don't want her to ruin the relationship, so I'm just going to lead everything throughout the entire relationship. And I think that's really unhealthy because like long term, there's different areas that women can be stronger in, and most guys would say, oh no, I don't want you to think, I don't want you to drive, I don't want you anything, I'll just do everything. And I think that's bound to fail because she's going to develop her mind of her own eventually. And I think it's important to embrace, like, let's say if I talk about emotions or empathy or compassion, and they immediately like, oh, that's so gay, that's so lame. I'm like, no, but you need that as a human to coexist with a woman, but they don't see value in that. Do you see value in men learning how to adapt all those above?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you said. That I think like for example, with my girlfriend, like we were going to Colombia, I let her take care of the planning. She's just a lot better at organizing than me. It is what it is, right? I'm pretty good at certain things, but I fucking suck at like meticulously organizing, get all the immigration forms. She did all of that, and I'm like, I'm happy to have her do it. Like, why would I want to do something I'm not good at? But there's other things that I'm like much better than her at. Then I will do those things. So yeah, I think it's like good to look at. Like, I think it's really cringe. This it's kind of like a meme. Guy goes to a restaurant with his girlfriend, and he's like, "All right, she'll get the cheeseburger." She's like, "Babe, I actually want the salad." Stop challenging me. You will take the cheeseburger. It's like people just take this shit way too far. The idea of leadership. It's like, okay, dude, like, so your girlfriend can't eat the food that she wants. It's getting really weird.
Right.
So yeah, I do agree with you. Is that there's strengths and weaknesses. Now I think that if you're weak in every area and she has to always lead, that's a recipe for disaster. But if there's just like you guys are just working as a team, which what I see a relationship is, and like you're balancing off each other's weak points with your strengths, I think that's how a relationship should be.
Yeah, I think that's important to I don't know. I think like as the main foundation as a relationship to start that, and in the end, you just not in the end, but during the entire relationship to learn each other. Because I think like at the same scenario you just said, like a guy orders, like my man orders for me every time we go anywhere, but mostly because he's learned my favorite foods and stuff like that. And it's like if I wanted to, I could ask or
Yeah,
interact.
that's different. That's
No, no,
different.
no, but like I think like the red pill people, they take it so extreme because they don't want the person to like you want to be with someone who actually wants to be with you, not because they need to be with you. I think that's the biggest problem that I've noticed. That like, I want to be with this person. I don't want to sit here and just be like, oh, I need him because he pays for this, or he's leading the life that I would never have without him. I think it's important to be with someone who chooses out of like everyone to be with you. And I think that's how you really win, in my truest opinion. You don't be with some girl because she didn't have any other choices.
No,
Um,
I completely agree with you. Yeah, and this is like an issue I have with the red pillars is they like if the girl needs you, there's going to be eventually another guy comes along that she can get those things from. If it's like I think like a lot of red pillars, they without saying it kind of talk about basically having transactional relationships where like she gives you pussy, she cleans, you give her money, and like you guys occasionally hang out, right? That's like the idea. They look at a very surface level, but eventually there's going to come along a guy who can give her more money than you, and then you're fucked. There's not like a deep basis to our relationship. And to me, like the idea of like, oh, she has to cook and clean is like pretty silly because like if you're a guy who makes a good amount of money, you can just hire a cleaning lady. It's not that expensive. You can hire like a chef. It's not that expensive. I mean, it's a cool bonus for a girl to cook. But the things my girlfriend gives me are like much deeper than that. Like, but I can't hire someone to create really awesome memories with, or I can have a strong emotional bond with, or I can, really rely on to always be there for me, or someone that's going to really be invested in my business and constantly give me ideas. Like, I can't hire someone for well, maybe for the last one I could, but that's basically the point. So yeah, I do think
yeah.
the way they phrase relationship is just like almost like a business transaction, which is like super cringe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, damn, it's gonna be hard to disagree with anything. Yeah, the whole point is like you want to be with someone who wants to be with you. It's as simple as that. And I think like again, they have these relationships where you could buy everything. You could buy the person to be there. You could buy the materialistic shit to be there. And I think that's what fails. And also, I think like once you embrace each other's like strength and weakness, then you can also again grow and focus on other things like the business together, or your relationship, or your kids, or whatever it could be. But you have more time. The whole point is to alleviate the stress that normal people would have if the stress was just only on one person. And
Mhm.
that empathy, because I think like emotionally a woman's more likely to be loyal to you if you show her that you understand her emotions, because that's kind of how most women operate off of, like, do I actually feel emotionally stimulated? And I don't think that's something that we talk about enough in the space because they find it irrelevant, which then I would say then you probably just want to go date a guy then, since you don't care about emotions. So
Yeah, I would look at it like this. You have to satisfy her sexual needs, her emotional needs, right? You can't just fuck her and then that's it. Her emotional needs, and I would say her lifestyle needs. And that's not exact. Like it may seem like, oh, you have to buy her everything she wants. But if you're like, if you're like me, like I don't like to really do that much shit. I like to argue with people on the internet. I like to hang out with my friends. I like to play with my dog. I like to have sex. Like I don't like to do like fancy shit. If I was
right, right,
dating a girl who wanted to constantly travel, go to boat parties, I wouldn't be able to satisfy her lifestyle need, right?
right.
That's why I need to get a girlfriend who's like similar to me, who also likes to just like chill, who doesn't want to like fucking do crazy shit. So I think those are the three needs that need to be satisfied. I think a lot of time the woman's sexual needs are not being satisfied. You get like cringe lords like Myron who say, "Oh, a woman's sexual pleasure doesn't even really matter." Okay, that's a really great way to get cheated on because there's gonna be another guy who's gonna fuck her well, and believe me, she's gonna hang out with him. That's just a recipe to fucking invite cheating.
Yeah. Well, I guess like again, men can compartmentalize like their sexual needs in a sense where like you can have like a hard, rough day. I would have to say, and correct me if I'm wrong. And like everything could be going wrong, but if it's one thing that you could definitely use is probably sex, then you wouldn't turn it down in a heartbeat. But for women, I have to say, in order for women to want to have sex, emotionally, you have to be stimulated to want to have sex with the guy. So it's like the way that we're just wired is a little bit different because like our priorities is like, hey, can I at least not feel like it's just transactional or a piece of meat? Can I actually feel like you want to sleep with me? You can like foreplay me emotionally or mentally, whatever it may be, for me to actually want to sleep with you. And a guy, it's like, no, like, I like you enough. Let's just sleep together. Let's just get it out of my system. Biology factor, all that shit. I think those guys have taken it and just really just broadened it and said like it's irrelevant, which I think that's why they have so many girls to make up for it. Wait, do you have an open relationship or is this like strictly monogamous?
That's where I was going to get to the next point.
Oh, okay.
I have a one-way open relationship.
One way.
Yeah, I know. I have literally the next node is one side open relationships are jokes. I was just literally about to talk about that. We can get into it now if you want. It seems like we largely agree on this point. Anyway, yeah, I don't think we have any disagreement on the previous point.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
All
so I
right.
guess yeah, so anyway, I don't know if it's like hyperbole or not, but you said one side open relationship or a joke. So I guess like maybe you can expand on that and like give your reasons for that.
So originally, I didn't understand that, in the beginning, because it was more so in the red pill stuff. It's very normal, I guess. Like that's the whole thing. Like guys are in the one open relationship, but I guess if you're gonna be in an open relationship, I don't understand. Maybe you can explain to me why
Mhm.
you think it's necessary, but I don't understand the if you actually want to be with somebody, why do you have to have it open, and what's the purpose of it? And if it's gonna be open, it would be more like Destiny and Melina, where it's both open, which I don't agree with the lifestyle, but it fits and it makes sense, and that's where I stand at with that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can definitely expand on that. I mean, the one area where I differ with the red pill when it comes to open relationship, one side open relationships, they viewed as a right, and I view it more of like a privilege. Like I don't think you're just because you're a high value man, you're entitled to have a one way open relationship because there's a lot of girls who are not going to go for that. Like that's just at the end of the day, like well over 50% of girls are not going to go for a one way open relationship. So you're searching for a girl who has like no jealousy pretty much and who's a little bit more open minded. And who doesn't really have a high novelty drive, so she's going to want to fuck a bunch of guys, right? You're looking for a little bit of a unicorn, right?
Mhm.
So I don't think you're just automatically entitled to a one way open relationship if you're high value man. I think that you have to find a girl who's on the same page with you. And that's not going to be, I mean, it can certainly happen if you're a high value guy, you have a lot of girls you're talking to. So then, yeah, it's not going to be hard. But yeah, so that's like the little distinction there. Now, in terms of like the why would you do that? So I can speak for myself. I'm one of those people that does have a high novelty drive. So I've like fucked like hundreds and hundreds of girls. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just like kind of
Yeah, no
outlaw
worries.
the foundation. And I legitimately enjoy the novelty. So the kind of sex I have with my girlfriend is emotional, passionate. It, it's so fucking good, right? I can't get that with a random girl. But one thing I cannot get with my girlfriend is novelty, right? Because we've had sex like a million times. And that's where like, like the option to hook up with other girls comes in because I have the novelty. The mistake I used to make when I was younger, and I truly regret this, is I would commit to regular relationships because I liked the girl, and then I would ignore my need for novelty, and that would cause disaster in one of two ways. Either I would slowly wind up building resentment for the girl, even though it's not a fault of her own, but I felt like, hey, she's preventing me from, enjoying one of my needs or whatever. Or I would actually cheat on the girl. I'm not proud of this. I've done this once or twice. And again, like I think cheating is horrible. Nowadays I would never cheat, but I create a situation for myself to be dissatisfied. So I think if you're someone like me who just has this like high need for novelty and something that you enjoy, then either one way or two way open relationships are what you can do. Assuming you want to be in a relationship, you can just have a lot of casual sex. I can make an argument for why I think for a guy, a one way open relationship is better. But essentially, for me, it comes down to the idea that the thought of my girlfriend having sex with any man is like repulsive to me.
Right.
It like basically sickens me. It's like watching my dog get kicked or something like that. And but for her, and we've had a lot of discussions about this, she truly doesn't feel any type of way about it. Because she says like, "Hey, listen, I know I'm the only girl that you have a connection with, but it doesn't mean it's like a free for all. Like if I was to start like doing romantic stuff or dating another girl, she would walk away 100%.
Right.
She would walk away from that. If I start hanging out with my exes, she would walk away. If I start like having random girls sleep over and start doing dating things, she would walk away, right? So it's just like I just know what her boundaries are, and it seems that with sex, she really really doesn't care about me having sex with girls. But when it comes to anything emotional, that's what she cares about, right? So we kind of establish each other's needs and boundaries, and that's how the one way open relationship came to be.
Okay. I mean, I can understand that for you. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong. Also, is there like a difference in distinguishing a relationship where, like you said, it's more passionate and more, like your sex is different with your girlfriend? From what I've heard, and maybe I could be wrong. My fiance confirmed it, but he was just like, there's a different type of like raunchy. He's like disgusting sick mind when it comes to men with sex. He's like that sometimes when you do love somebody, you don't want to do that with them because you feel like it's like sinful, I guess. And he was just like, there's a different type of sex that you have with your partner than you would with somebody that you
I
just
know what you're
don't.
talking about. No, my relationship is not like that at all. We do some of the fucking nastiest
Okay.
fucking yeah, I do with her everything I would do and more, honestly.
Okay.
We're both kinky as fuck.
Okay.
Um, so no, it's not that. It just simply comes down to novelty. It's just like I love novelty. Now, to be fair, in the last year and a half, my desire for novelty has shrunk a lot.
Okay.
So in the early stages, I used to like have sex with like multiple girls a month. Now it's been like 3 4 months since I've had sex with a new girl, right? So like my desire for novelty has shrunk, and maybe eventually one day it will go away. I don't think so, but it could happen. But I don't want to. I like having that option because the last thing I want to do is ever either build resentment or cheat on the girl that I love.
Oh, so you like having the option. I think that's like the important thing to highlight is because you like the option to, if you wanted to, if you felt the urge to, for the whole novelty thing, you'd have that room to, and there'd be like no hard feelings. Is that what it is
Yeah.
basically?
Well, yeah, but I do feel that urge, from time to time. The point I'm making is I feel that urge less nowadays than I used to like years ago, but I still feel that urge and I will like act on that. But yeah, it's less frequent for me nowadays.
Gotcha. Do you want kids? Do you want me asking?
No, you're good. You can ask me anything. I don't have like a strong position on that. At this point in time, I have no desire to have kids, but I have like extra reasons. Like I have Lyme disease, and I wouldn't want to give that to my kid.
Right.
But maybe if I can get rid of the Lyme disease in like 10 years, yeah, I might do it. I just like at this point in time, due to the Lyme disease and due to like kind of what I do, and due to the fact that like I have a hard enough time taking care of like my dog, it's like I don't feel like I'm in a point in my life where I'm ready to bring a person into this world. And the last thing I would want to do is be a bad dad. Even though my mother has very graciously offered to take care of everything related to the kid and raise the kid, I would still like not feel comfortable with that. So yeah, I think it just comes down to I'm not at a place right now in my life where I want to have kids, but that could potentially change in a decade.
And with that, if let's say you were to have kids, would you change the open relationship on one end, or would you still keep it and just be more discreet about it? Like, or I mean, what's your
Yeah,
thought?
that's a good question because the last thing I would want is the kids to know about it. Um, that's a good question. I'm honestly not sure.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll find out then one day.
Well, we'll see. It's gonna
All right.
Angela, stay in touch with me for like a decade or two, and then we can get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff.
It's good.
All
It's
right,
gonna be a
what's
lot.
next?
Yeah, it's okay. So it seems like we don't really disagree on this either, right? Too much.
I mean, yeah, again, it's like it's almost sounds like you're the anomaly in certain ways where it's like you're able to break down the what and the whys. And I mean, obviously it makes sense. But I think some people where like if they say something and it doesn't make sense, then I'd like to push them on it. But I mean, it's really not if it's a preference, it's a preference. And if you're saying it's novelty, then what can I really say? Nothing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's kind of hard to
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like one way open relationships are a mass solution. I think that a lot of girls are not going to go for it, and like unless novelty is very important to you, I don't think I treat it differently than the red pillars. I don't think you're entitled to it. It's just a preference. It's like, are you entitled to like fucking I don't know, like fly first class? Well, no, it's just like you prefer to fly first class. So, but the reality at the end of the day, most people are not going to fly first class because they just can't.
right.
So that's kind of how I view it. Okay, anyway, so okay, here's the next one. Men want to lead generally in the red pill space, so they should spend more time learning how to lead instead of blaming divorce on women. Take accountability for response. I mean, I completely agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most of the red pill is just like blaming and victim mindsets. I mean, honestly, I think I'm
And
actually going to do a video pretty soon how feminists are very similar to red pillars in a lot of ways. Believe it or not, it's going to be an interesting video. And one of the biggest ways is the what's it called, the victim mindset. They both see themselves as a victim. Feminists see
yes.
themselves as victims from men, and red pillars see themselves as victims from women. Like, oh, these women, gynocentric female order, all these good
Right,
women are
right.
against us. Yeah, so on this one we don't really have a disagreement. I don't know if
Okay.
there's anything you want to add to that before we move on.
No, no, no. We're on the same page. Okay.
Okay, cool. An incel or average guy who says body count doesn't matter would be quick to still be with an OnlyFans girl if opportunity present. Okay, completely agree with that one. Men like younger girls because they're impressionable, easy. Oh, we might have a disagreement with that. So, can you explain why you feel like this is the case?
Um, okay, so when we say younger, I'm saying like on a drastically, he's like 40, 50 years old, wanting to be like with like a 20 something years old, not like a 10 year, because I have a 10-year age difference with my fiance. So when I say that,
That's
based
because
on
they're impression. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
part of it, obviously, I do believe like it's less of a combative person to be with. But if that's like the only reason why you're dating a younger girl, I'd have to say like as a man, fun I've noticed that they like the confidence in what like the older chicks know how to be in bed or like what they want in a relationship. But it's more so like also the younger girls are impressionable, so it goes back to them wanting to build a bear. Like they like the entertainment of a young bimbo, but then like they like the banter with like an older chick. So that's why I personally say that. So they want someone that's impressionable based on the red pill stuff. With the girls who are just like the girls who go on the podcast who are just dumb and just like, yeah, okay, yeah. And they just kind of say yes to the first shiny thing that gets offered to them.
Yeah, I would say though, to be fair, and I'm not dismissing what you're saying. I think there's
Yeah, yeah, no
elements
worries.
to the stuff you said, but to be fair, I think that like if you're like, let's take a really successful guy like Leonardo DiCaprio, right? I think he's like mid 40s, late 40s, something like that, and he's known for dating like 19, 20-year-old girls. Well, I think that a big part of it is that just in terms of physical attractiveness, a 19-year-old girl is generally going to be more physically attractive than a 50-year-old girl. It just kind of is what it is. And if you're one of the few men who's in a position where you have unlimited options like Leo, then you probably would pick the more attractive girl. I think the second benefit is like a little bit of a status symbol. So if you're like a 55, 6-year-old guy and you're walking around with a hot 20-year-old, right? That's a massive status symbol. Versus if you're dating like another grandma, no one's going to really give you props for that. And I think a lot of the, again, because this is something that really happens in two categories. Number one, where the guy's paying for it, or the exception to that is if it's a high value guy, right? I mean, there's a small percentage of like old dudes who have massive game, but it's mostly comes down to you're a high value guy, like you're a celebrity, or you're like an ultra rich dude, or you're paying for her lifestyle. And sometimes it's a combination of both. But yeah, like those people want the status boost, and of course, yeah, there's the physical attractiveness. Now, another argument I've heard red pillars make, which I will say I somewhat agree with, is they say that older women have more baggage. And so the advantage of dating like a 19-year-old girl is like she doesn't come with baggage. It's like getting like a grown-up dog who's like 5 years old, or getting a puppy. Like, you're the older dog could have some good habits, could have some bad habits, but the puppy, you can kind of, like you're starting from fresh.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I would also say like what you're saying definitely makes sense, but at the same time, it's like when you said in the beginning you were like more engaging with like sleeping with more girls, and like slowly your windows kind of close, like you're not as like thrilled to sleep with us. I think like you become desensitized to the space. I think like yes, initially it's funner, it's cooler to sleep with the younger girls, but it gets to a point where like let's say you said Leo. Um, I don't know personally the situation, but I would say like at this point, maybe he's looking for a fucking unicorn that is young bimbo, but like also has some
Oh,
sort of idea on what life is, but like
yeah, that's right.
not
Yeah, yeah.
young enough for like it's easy for him to just get his dick sucked, but at the same time it's like okay, what's next? I think like essentially you kind of want to look for someone like at least have one main chick, and then it makes sense why you have so many young bimbos. Like I think until like somebody has that, I would have to assume that it's just easier with the young chick because you don't want the challenge. At the same time, not just because you have status or money doesn't mean you actually understand female nature. So you're probably just sleeping with them thinking that maybe this is going to be different. Maybe this is going to be different. It's never going to be different.
Okay, yeah. A few things I want to respond to. Just writing this down as we talk. Um, I think that what was I going to say? I forgot my first point, but the second point was this. I don't know if it's necessarily easier to sleep with young girls. Like again, talking anecdotally, I've gone through my mill phase, where I fuck girls who are like 40 something, and I fuck girls who are like 19, 20 years old, right, and everything in between. And I didn't feel like the 19-year-old girls were harder than milfs. If anything, I think milfs are pretty easy because they know what they want. They don't really have as many hangups, and they're like, yeah, I want to have sex with a younger guy, and this is what I want. Versus like the 19-year-old girls, they might be like kind of inexperienced. They don't know what they want. They're kind of like blah blah. So I'm not saying it's harder with younger girls. I'm just saying I don't think it's substantially easier from what I've seen. I feel like if anything, if I had to pick one, I would say milfs are probably easier.
I think it's all right. When I say easier in a sense where like MILFs, they know exactly what they want. So it's like unless you have all the tools to be in a relationship with her, it's kind of pointless to talk about. But with the younger girls, I think that they have less life to live, and they're more ooh and odd with the shiny shit, and it's more so like what experience you have that they don't. So I would say that they're more impressionable, so it's easier to be with them in that sense where it's like they're not going to argue with you because they've never walked down this path before, as opposed to like the older MILFs. So it'd be like been there, done that, and you're either ready to grow with them or you're wasting their time, which is why most of them are single because they don't really want to figure out this journey with you. Whether you have your journey or they're not going to really make it, or they're just going to compartmentalize you and just have sex with you. It's between the two.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It's a recipe for disaster to be like seriously dating a girl who's significantly younger than you. So I'm 33. I would totally hook up with an 18-year-old. Assuming I was single, I would totally hook up with an 18-year-old. I don't think I would date an 18-year-old, and that's not even that much of a gap. But if you're like a guy, like my dad is 56, he's single. He's dating a girl who's 10 years younger than him. That's fine. But if my dad was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about dating this 20-year-old," I'd be like, "That's a recipe for disaster because
Right.
massive maturity gap and life
Yes.
gap." But I think casual sex is totally different than dating because you can totally fuck a bunch of 19-year-old
Right. Right.
girls
Right.
dating them. Um, But I think also too the other thing you said, like as a guy, the last thing you want in your potential girlfriend is someone who has massive baggage and is jaded, right? And that is more commonly doesn't mean always, but more commonly happens with older women, right? Because like the reason why are they talking to you? Because they had a bad relationship, it didn't work out. Maybe they were married and they got fucked, or the guy did something. So naturally, on average, they're going to be more jaded. There's some great older women out there who are not jaded, who don't have baggage, but they're kind of the exception, I feel like.
Yeah, I think like women are jaded in general, but at the same time, if men understood, like again, and that was such a broad statement to say, like if they understood like what the female nature was thinking or emotionally, like a lot of these things, like the same way a woman would be okay with being in a relationship with a guy who's in a one open relation, like one open end, she'd be okay with a lot of things if the guy understood the female nature, meaning like her baggage, all that shit that she has immediately isn't there if you actually understood how to cater to that relationship, which is something I think we don't talk about enough. Because even though it is there, it also is could be quite irrelevant depending on how the relationship is with that guy and the girl. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think we have to talk about that. So, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. So, you said that if you understand female nature, you know how to talk about. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say a woman has massive trust issues because the last three guys she dated cheated on her and lied to her. And let's say she starts dating you, and let's say you were like the best person ever. You never plan on lying to her, cheating on her, but she has massive trust issues. How would you alleviate those? Okay, how would you remove those trust issues from the equation just by understanding her?
No, so I think like yes, I like what you said there, and I think the biggest thing is like people do this a lot in relationships where just because you physically do something, you don't verbalize it. It's always going to be a big disconnect. And if you verbalize it, but you don't actually show that you're doing it, that's also another disconnect. And I would say like with men, they generally show like, hey, I can be a good person. They also don't verbalize what their plan of action are and what they could do as a man. I'm not saying that you need to, but that would definitely help. It's almost like a business. As a woman, I could say I love you all day long, but if I don't show you that I love you, you're going to assume like, all right, you're saying a lot, but you're doing nothing. And I would say like going into a relationship, you're masculine, you're leading. So at the end of the day, you're gonna have to show me that you can lead the relationship and you can do all these things and put me at ease so I can shut the hell up. And I think that's one thing that women generally, if I'm gonna have fucked up issues, and which I think everyone has fucked up issues, it's important to also subdue the things that are in the back of your mind so that you could have like a healthy, thriving relationship. That's what I mean.
I think it can help, but I think if a girl has a massive emotional trauma or massive emotional baggage, even if you do everything right, you're like as perfect as me, you're still not going to be able to alleviate that completely. You're still going to be there, and it's going to be present in a strong form. I'll try to give an example. Okay, so I used to have a girlfriend that had massive trust issues. It just came down to the fact that she's been cheated, she's been burned in the past, right? And I was always very honest with her, right, from the start. But and I try to show her like, hey, I want to show you that I'm not going to lie to you. But again, it's kind of like proving a negative. But there was just like for example, she would call me, and let's say I was on a podcast or didn't pick up my phone. I didn't pick up. Within 5 minutes, she would start blowing up my phone. Oh, you're with some girl, aren't you? And this is before the one-way open relationship thing. And I'm like, no, I'm literally working right now. And she's like, oh, you're lying to me. So like those trust issues, despite my best efforts, still kind of leaked into our relationship and had negative impact on that. So I think that at the end of the day, you can't really be the girl's therapist. Like if it's mild, maybe, but if it's significant baggage, there's you can work with her, but it's gonna bleed over into the relationship.
I would say yes, it would bleed over into a relationship if you don't have control of yourself or the relationship. And I guess it really depends on what type of person you're dealing with. But I would say to the degree, I don't generally think that women would throw away an entire relationship if it was the guy that she wanted just based on her trust issues. I think that's something that if she's able to say, you know what, like I really want this guy, I have trust issues. And then if as a man, you're able to say, listen, I've done this XYZ. I think presented with all the facts, I don't see how that could actually like ruin a relationship.
I
So
actually had a girl throw away a relationship with me over trust issues. So basically, what happened was this requires a little bit of context. And again, keep in mind, this was like a more of a closed relationship. This wasn't a one-way open relationship. So my girlfriend at the time had a bad habit of getting like really emotionally riled up and saying things that she would later regret. So the first time this happened was when I like didn't pick up her phone call or something like that. I was just busy with shit. And then she started accusing me of cheating. I'm like, yo, relax. I'm not cheating on you. I can call you in like half an hour. She's like, don't bother. We're done. Right. So she like kind of broke up with me. And I was like, okay, you're just gonna break up with me over text? She's like, I can't do this anymore. Next day, she's like, hey, how you doing, babe? I'm like, you broke up with me yesterday. She's like, no, 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 don't take that seriously. I was just emotionally affected. This is, I didn't really break up with you. And I was like, you literally said, I'm done. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, no, no. I was just really emotionally riled up. Please forgive me. I was like, look, I can forgive you one time, but if this happens again, if you break up with me again in the future, that will be the final breakup. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna take it back afterwards. And a few months later, it happened again over something silly. Again, trust issues. She did it, and then I was like, okay, we're finished officially. And next day, she's like, yeah, babe, how you doing? I'm like, we're over. We're not dating anymore. And she was like, she's like, what do you mean? She's like, come on, you know me. I was like, yeah, but I told you explicitly that this is like, if this happens again, I'm gonna walk away from the relationship. To be fair, the relationship had other issues, right? But that was really the thing that ended the relationship. And she was like, she's like, wait, let me come over and talk to you. I was like, okay, we can talk. But she came over and she tried to make her case how, listen, like how she got emotionally riled up. I was like, but I gave you a clear boundary, like that, you can't do this, and you did it. So I'm really sorry. I love you, but I can't put up with that. Right. And she was like flabbergasted by that. But that's like a perfect anecdotal experiment of how trust issue literally ended the relationship.
But do you think that the way that a woman acts towards a guy reflects on like how he leads the relationship? I'm not saying you in specific, but maybe in that certain situation, maybe at the point you are in your life, maybe you're very passive, or maybe just like you felt like she could be like that. I think like women, like for me, I respect my fiance a lot, so I personally would never have those outlandish type of like there, but if it was something that I didn't respect and it was convenient, or maybe it's just like casual, or it was like a lot of other issues on top of that. I think that the way a woman treats a man really says a lot about the relationship itself. Is that
I think it plays a role for sure. How, yeah, sure, it plays a role, but it's not 100%. It's not even 90%. I think that, in a relationship, there's you, there's her, and then there's the relationship. So you can get the relationship part right. You can lead, you can have strong boundaries, which this wasn't too long ago. This was about three and a half years ago. So it wasn't like when I was young. Yeah, I think I truly did like everything right in that relationship. But then there's her and her baggage, and that can really affect things. You could lead the relationship perfectly, but if she has massive amounts of baggage, that will bleed over into the relationship. Less so, if you were a guy then like who didn't lead the relationship, but still going to bleed over. There's just like you just can't really have a really perfect relationship with a girl who has massive amounts of trauma and baggage. It just always bleeds over.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying, but I guess like for me, a relationship isn't declared a relationship until a man says it is. Like I could sleep with a guy all day long, but if he doesn't see a relationship, like to me, the prize is when he says, "Hey, this is a serious relationship, monogamous between me and you." And I think like the effort to me being whatever issues I have, I would see it. And maybe it is anecdotal from my experience, but seeing how most women would throw away their entire, I don't know, family values. They'd go across the country for some loser, for some guy, just for the simple fact that she wants so bad to be in his life or in his quote unquote frame. She'd willing to just kind of throw her entire PTSD for a relationship that she thinks she respects or looks up to. And that's just maybe I'm framing it in that sense. That's what I view it as.
Well, it sounds like you don't, and this is a good thing. You don't have massive like emotional trauma that you're carrying into your current relationship. So you might be having a hard time like understanding, like, well, listen, like I would never do that, and that's fine, and that's a good thing. But there are people who have like hardcore emotional trauma, and it could not be their fault. Maybe they got raped, something like that. Maybe they got taken advantage of, right? Like there could be like things that are outside their control, but emotional trauma is real, and it like bleeds over like crazy. I mean, you can work on it and you can improve it, but if you haven't worked on it, I mean, it's going to be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe we're speaking in like vague context. Like maybe we're saying someone with extreme baggage, but like needs like therapy, PTSD. Like even like a guy who has like major mommy issues is something he has to work out. So maybe that's just like the
Well, I don't
context.
know if I would put my ex in that category though. She wasn't like crazy. Like if you meet her, you would think she's nice. She's totally normal. My
Okay.
mom met her. They hung out. They were friends, right? So she wasn't like some like crazy lunatic. She was like a totally normal girl, but she had really bad trust issues, right, due to things that happened previously in her life, and that just bled over in the relationship. I don't know, and I've seen this happen with other guys as well. Like, and it goes the opposite direction too. A guy can have massive baggage, and that can bleed over into the relationship with the girl. Like, for example, let's assume, hypothetically speaking, that your current, you said fiance.
Yeah.
Okay, let's assume that he had really bad trust issues because the five girls before you cheated on him, took all his money, fucked him over, right? It was just like he had massive trust issues. Like that would affect your relationship. Like,
It was again like we're speaking in this anecdotal sense because it was sort of like that. Like I don't really talk about it too much because I think the internet sucks. But I think this should be a space to talk about those things because I mean I think like I come from a pretty shitty background and I walked into it with like I was sort of like a hardcore like feminist at one point, and even saying that out loud sounds weird. I was like anti-marriage, anti-kids, anti a lot of things like men's talk, blah blah blah. And I think like being with somebody where I saw like the value in things, it wasn't even like just like the core values of a man where I wanted to be in this life because I wanted to be in, a masculine frame that I'm like, wow, I admire that. I look up to that. And whatever PTSD I thought I had to really just kind of suppress it and try to like work my way into this relationship to make sure that I could learn whatever it is that I'm flawed about and maybe like kind of get him to. But it took a really long time for him to, I mean, I would say the flip to the flip to script, the script to flip in a sense where he had his own, crazy chick drama. So a lot of it was just projected onto me. But I think like it's a matter of like, what do you hold as a man to where a girl in specific wants to change herself to be in a relationship with you, and you can either take that and run with it, or you could actually evolve together and be like, you know what, like thanks for evolving in this sense so that I could grow with you. And now like we're kind of at a point now we recognize our flaws and we've kind of like taken care of that. But it took me first recognizing that you have something that I want. I don't know if that makes any sense. I know it's
No, it
like
makes
words.
sense. Is it fair to say that you're pretty self-aware? Generally, you're a pretty self-aware person.
Yeah, I think like self-awareness comes from not having shit. I think that when you don't have shit, you don't really have room to like sit here and cherry pick your way through relationships. Like, you kind of have to be more realistic with your options. So maybe that's
Well, no, I think you can have shit and have high level of self awareness. You seem like you have a pretty decent level of self awareness, just kind of from like the discussion we're having. I don't know you well, obviously, but and I would consider myself to have a high level of self awareness too. I wasn't born with it though. Like that's something I worked on year over year. So I do think it's easier if you have self awareness and you can recognize how you're doing. But like for example, my ex and just a lot of people who have trauma, they don't actually understand. Like she legitimately could not fathom why what she did was very hurtful to me. Like I had to explain to her over and over and over again. Like she just did not have the self awareness to take accountability and say, "Hey,
right.
you know what? I recognize that me breaking up with you over text at midnight can be very, very hurtful. Can make you feel insecure in the relationship. Can make me feel like I don't really care about you. I recognize all that." Like she didn't have the self awareness to like process all that until it was explained to her multiple times. So I do think that's kind of maybe the missing link when we're having this.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, the self-awareness. Okay, so I think there are chicks who are self-aware, but maybe there's some who just aren't. I
Yeah, of
think that's
course.
fair to say. Okay, cool. There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, it's same thing with guys. As guys
Yeah,
self-aware
yeah.
as not women. Okay, we can move on to the next point. Let me just turn my EC on.
Loving you on TikTok. Nice.
All right. So next point. Older women have baggage. Well, we agree on that. So there's nothing really to discuss there. Most people settle. We agree on that too. What percentage of people do you feel settle? Like couples are settling?
Did I say that?
Yeah, that was in the email.
Most people settle. Most people settle. Okay. I don't know the percentage on it, but I'd have to say, based on how strict people are with their rules in dating, I'd have to say it's all a facade. I think like if I ask a guy what type of girl he wants, he's gonna name the absolute extreme small waist, fat ass, submissive, all the stuff. And then you see some people they settle for in reality. I think like the misconception on the internet is like people have these extreme standards when it comes to dating, but in reality they settle. So I wouldn't know the percentage of it, but I would say most people settle in my opinion.
Yeah, I would put it at like 90% if I had to guess.
Okay. All
I
right,
think
cool.
I think it's a high percentage for sure. Okay. Getting married young is detrimental. I think we largely agree on that. When you say young, what age range do you mean?
I would say like early 20s. Like I think I don't see if you don't know who you are and you're getting married young, just because it's the first option that you probably meet. I think that's in the long haul, it's gonna fuck you up because you're still growing to find out what you like and don't like. And um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
No, I think I largely agree with that. The only exception is if you're someone who actually is very evolved and you're very mature for your age and you know what you want, you know what you don't want, which is a small percentage of people. Then I think being gay, married, young could be okay. But yeah, like I've talked about some of my parents on this channel. My parents married very young. My mom was 18 or 19, maybe. My dad was 21. Very very young, right? And they just if they waited like half a decade to a decade, they wouldn't have married each other because they weren't right for each other. And that's not because one of them was a bad person. They're both like amazing human beings, who are actually now really close friends, but they just weren't compatible, and that only happened because they married so young. So yeah, I think getting married too young can be detrimental. So we kind of agree on that. If you have to search hard for someone to be with, maybe you're not ready to be in a relationship. It's not that there isn't any good people in the West. Can you expand on that?
Yes, I recognize that there's constant complaints online of people just always saying like the West sucks, the West sucks. And though I can agree there's a lot of shitty things in the West, I think there's also a factor. There's a lot of great things in the West. I think that people are just used to being in the most like major cities or seeing the major thing floating online, and then you used to have this assumption that if you're not in a relationship, it's because you can't. That nobody wants you or your relationship sucks, but it's just you suck at being in relationships. I think that when you suck at being in a relationship, you just point fingers at everyone else other than yourself, and that's what I mean. And for guys and for girls, I think that I've noticed that.
Well, I think it's less with that you suck at relationships. You suck at attracting girls in the first place, right? If you like if you're like you have like you're sleeping with hundreds of girls, like there's gonna be one girl that's gonna be really relationship material. Or let's say like you have a social circle with hundreds of girls who like are attracted to you and respect you. You're not even necessarily fucking them. There will be one girl, one or two girls who are going to be, relationship material. I guess this directly ties into the next point, which I'll just bring up now. Passport bros are coping. So can you expand on what you mean by this exactly?
Okay, so my problem with the movement itself, it's the movement that I don't understand. I think like if you're not going to adapt the cultures of other countries and you're strictly just going there just for the chicks because you think they're submissive, I think you're wildly wrong because they're way more traditional back in like in other countries, and a lot of people that are in the West are not traditional, and they don't really know the responsibility that comes with marrying someone out of the states. And though there are like people who go to the military and all that stuff and meet chicks, I think like they've adapted other cultures. But for the strict fact of like people that are here in the modern world expecting women to be a certain like submissive chick when you as a man have no capabilities to lead or hold down a household, I think that's just kind of funky.
Okay, I'll explain to you kind of the logic, and then you can maybe tell me if you agree or disagree with that. There's essentially two reasons for passport bros. Well, we're taking things like money and cost of living aside, like in terms of the woman. The first reason is simply sexual arbitrage. So it is a lot easier to meet a girl in Colombia than it is in Miami. Like sleeping with, going on a date with, like anything. Same thing goes for Southeast Asia. Same thing goes for Eastern Europe. And I've traveled to all these places. I've traveled to Colombia. I've traveled to Eastern Europe. I've never been to Southeast Asia, but I have a lot of friends who've been there. And I can tell you that your like sexual market value goes up by 2 points there. And I personally don't have a hard time meeting a girl in Miami, but it is nice, to go from like dealing with a bunch of flaky girls to basically a bunch of really hot Colombian girls who are like really dying to go on a date with you. So that's the first reason. The second reason is generally in those places, women have values that are more in line with the guys who are searching for that, like the passport bros. So typically those guys do want a traditional woman who's like kind of submissive, who's like supportive, right? And you can find that in the West, by the way, but you are more likely to find that in either Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia or Colombia. Do you disagree with any of these premises?
I don't disagree with it, but I think my disagreement with all that is like if we're talking about, and I only strictly focus on like relationships, like being in a long-term relationship. So if you're looking for a relationship, how many of those relationships do you really need? One. And then two, to go across another country. And just be honest, like that's completely fine, but just be realistic that it is transactional because there lack men in other countries. They're lacking men with some sort of status or finances in other countries. And if you're there because of your finances and that it makes you more valuable there, then be upfront with that. But I think like to think that these girls are just in love with you because you're a masculine man and that you couldn't be that in the West, I think that's just kind of I don't know, it's stupid, honestly.
Well, again, I think that you start to benefit from sexual arbitrage. Like let's say your value, like whatever, let's just put a number on it. It's a 6 in the West. Your value in Colombia will be like a 7.5. In Philippines, it might be an 8.5, right? So you reach a whole tier. It's like almost like being a celebrity in a way. And the reasons for that are, multitude. Number one is you're exotic, right? So that's generally benefits. It's like if a black guy goes to Sweden, he'll probably do better than a white guy because again, he's more exotic. Number two is perceived status. So, people will think like, oh, he's American, he can afford to travel. You're a more rare commodity. And I think number three is fuck. What was I gonna say? There's more to it, but basically there's two of them. But I think it doesn't need to be transactional. It can be transactional, and that happens. But I think that I don't think it's the vast majority of the time it is transactional. I think typically the way I've seen it play out with like my friends who move to other countries is they go to, like, I'll take my friend Kevin who went to Vietnam. He goes to Vietnam. He starts hooking up with a good amount of girls on Tinder. He's into like volleyball and shit. So he starts like playing. Then he meets a girl that he really likes, and he eventually winds up dating her. But I would venture to say that relationship is really solid. It's not transactional. It's only transactional if you're giving her something, citizenship, money, whatever. But if you're living in that country where there's no citizenship being involved, and you're not like buying her a bunch of shit, that it's not going to be by default transactional.
Do you think that the average guy has what it takes to financially keep up with that lifestyle?
Sorry, say the last part
To
again.
financially keep up with the lifestyle of moving to another country and, completely adapting another culture?
Well, no, because I think most people have jobs that prohibit them from doing that. So this is only possible if you have a virtual job or you have your own business. If you have like a regular job, you're not going to be able to do that. Like if you have to be like a fucking Trader Joe's on Monday, you can't move to Vietnam or whatever. So it's a small percentage of people who have the luxury of either having a virtual job. And even just because you have a virtual job doesn't mean they'll be okay with you living. I know one of my friends, he has a virtual job, but then when he talked about how he's going to live in Europe for a month or two, they're like, no, like we want you same time zone. So you have a cool, relaxed virtual job, or you have your own business. But that's less than like 30% of men.
Yeah, that's my problem with it. I think my problem is like there are, like, again, the exceptions that could do that, but I don't think that a lot of people can actually live up to that lifestyle financially. And you could say, oh, I'll live here for 6 months and I'll go back and forth, but I don't think that girl got into a relationship with a guy to have like a part-time husband. It was like full-time, traditional, for a reason. And I think like if you're willing to live there, like your friend that moved to the country and has a solid relationship, yeah, that's great. I would never shame that. But I think my biggest problem with that is that instead of realizing in the West that there are people here that would grow with you, that are willing to split things down the middle with you, because I think generally men and women here are equally in a financial bundle where it's like, what do we do? We're going to split shit down the middle until we figure out how to get out of this hamster wheel. Instead of realizing that, they have this idea that they have to pay for every single thing, and then they get pissed at the fact that they can't afford it. And then they're like, well, dating in the West sucks. I'm just going to go to another country. And that's
well, Angela, to be fair, that's mostly red pillars. Like, I think most normies don't believe that.
Which part?
The fact that you have to pay for everything. That's not like a common normie belief. That's more of like a internet.
That's why I was saying like a lot of our talking points were from that. But at the same time, I think like if you're talking immediately, everyone's like, oh, okay. Again, maybe online talk, just specify this. The idea of like, let's just go to the West. Let's immediately just pack up our shit and go. I'm like, what? Have you really thought about how you're going to do this financially and how it's going to play out? Like, are you going to move her here and she's going to adapt to the West? Like, what's your plan after you go there? And I think a lot of people, they don't think it out. And I don't think we talk about this enough. They just have this idea that, oh yeah, we'll just, so easy. She's submissive. And I'm like, like her being submissive comes with the territory that you have to be a man, which I don't think there's a lot of masculine men in the West either. So
I would agree with the last thing you said. There's not a lot of masculine men in the West. So yeah, I do agree that's not something that's accessible for most men. I think it's a good goal to strive to. Like me personally, I can live wherever the fuck I want. It's not gonna negatively affect my career. In fact, me living in a third world country would be beneficial because my expenses would be a lot lower. Right. I pay like fucking $6,000 a month for rent. Okay, I could get this type of place for like $500 in Bali or something like that. So it would only be beneficial to me. But yeah, I'm kind of like a little bit of the exception to the rule. Also, you could have a virtual job. Let's say you need to take care of your mom, or you have like you have a kid that you had before this, or you have some kind of community tie that you can't leave. So it's not for everyone. It's for a small percentage of men. But for those percentages of men, there are tangible, practical values to going abroad. And like we're talking about averages here. There's amazing women in America and there's horrible women in like Colombia. But on average, if you're looking for more traditional women, you're way more likely to find that abroad. It just kind of is the reality of the matter. It's just the averages are a lot more in your favor when it comes to like either Eastern Europe, South America, or Southeast Asia.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Again, it goes back to me saying the actual movement itself, like them trying, it's like a feminist move. Like an initial idea, I understand it was a righteous movement, sure, whatever. But then it crosses over to just it's all for the wrong reason. I think once it crosses over to just demonizing everything in the West while enjoying the perks of modern day of social media and the accessibility to each other, instead of realizing that we have everything we have at our fingertips, you just got to learn some sort of game or whatever it is you have to learn as a man. Instead of realizing that, I think the idea that we would just get a passport would be a lot easier. It's just kind of like a hope. That's what I was saying.
Okay, so yeah, so we've clarified that. I mean, just as a side note, I don't think this is purely just a men thing, although I think it applies more to men. I think like I have a female friend, girl I used to hook up with like a decade ago, and we're just friends now. And she has a hard time dating in LA, and she's a pretty girl. She's not
Mhm.
ugly or something like that. And the issue she has is guys will fuck her, and then they'll kind of gaslight her, and like they're just not good for relationships. And when she gets in a relationship, the guy turns out to be a liar, or takes her for granted. And so one of the biggest pieces of advice I've told her is like, hey, if you move to like the Midwest or you move to like the South, you're gonna have that way less. Like I know with one of my ex girlfriends from a while ago, after we separated, kept in touch, and she told me she's like, yeah, I'm having a hard time meeting a guy, and then she moved to South Carolina, and it was a lot easier. So I think this can apply for both men and women. But I do think for men it's a stronger effect. But okay, so you wouldn't have an issue with a guy who, for example, has a virtual job and is legitimately looking for more traditional women, and he is like actually dominant going abroad to meeting a girl, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. I think again, it just adapt the damn culture. I think it's just more of like it doesn't make any sense. It's almost like seeing like an older man date like a 19-year-old. Like you do realize it makes no sense. Like please make it make sense. But I don't care what anyone does. I think for me logically, I'd like to understand what the math is and like does it actually make sense on why you want to do this? And I think if you're willing to adapt the culture or willing to financially, provide for that situation, and also like if you have the capabilities to do it, then do it. But it also has to make sense. I think some people just have this idea like like let's say Japan, like if you don't adapt the culture in some sort of way, they kind of frown upon the fact that, all right, what are you doing here? You're just like an American person here, just kind of living off of the perks of us being a very strict society and the women are this and that. And I think like that's where my biggest like when it comes to people who do that, the whole movement itself.
Okay, I'm not basically not adapting the local culture.
Yeah, I would say like most cultures would expect that, and if not, then I think again you're just expecting this. There's going to be a disconnect within the relationship. I truly believe that because if you're not actually speaking the language, understanding the food as women, that's something that we would like to actually grow with our partner and enjoy. The cultures and understanding and communication. And I think like if you're not willing to do that, you don't really show that you care much about the relationship other than it being physical and convenient.
Would you then also say that the idea of people who move to America but don't adopt at least elements of American culture, they're like they don't learn English, would that be also just as annoying for you?
Fuck yeah. Yeah, I get on my grandma all the time about it. I'm like, "Grandma, please, you've been here forever. What are you doing?"
Okay, you're consistent. If you don't mind me asking, where's your family from originally?
Vietnam.
Oh. Funny coincidence. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we don't really have actually that much of a disagreement on this one. Okay, next one. Hoflation is an excuse. Can you expand on that?
Okay, so again, another I was on the whatever pod and I think I went to go say something. The guy was saying hoflation has made it harder. Like was it what does he say that men nowadays work 10 times harder for pussy than men did back in the day.
Yeah.
And I'm confused into what do you mean when he says that because I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, what are you doing that you have to work so hard for? I think like as a man, you're having to work harder as a man in general because you want to make more money to enjoy the perks of this generation in society. Like back then it was simple. You just got married at like 18, 19. You had a cow, you had a farm, you had whatever, traded it in. But like nowadays you get to drive in Tesla and AC, you get to make money online, you get to do freaking drop shipping and you're complaining about what it takes to get a chick. I just don't understand that how it's called hoflation.
Did you see the video I made on this?
No.
It's a
Why?
short. Let me play. It's like 30 seconds. I
Sure,
think it
sure,
will kind
sure.
of set the stage for this discussion. Okay. I'm going to take a look at this. Okay. So here it is.
We're talking about hoflation. So modern men have to work 5 times harder than their grandfathers did for women 20 times worse than what their grandmothers were.
Instead of hoflation, this should be called the whole gap, because it's not actually getting harder for everyone. For the guys at the very top, it's never been easier. 50 years ago, if you're a celebrity, you want to get laid, you still have to go to the bar, maybe charm a girl, or maybe you would have to write a letter to a girl who's like your fan. Nowadays, you literally have a pussy manager who's ordering girls for you like pizza, and due to a lack of religion and social institutions, there's more hot girls who are willing to sleep with you. However, that means there's less girls for the guys at the very bottom, because they don't have strong social institutions like family or church. They're finding mates for them, so they have to actually do the work themselves, and that involves doing a lot more work. It's gotten easier for the people at the very top, harder for the bottom 50%, and for about 30% stayed about the same.
Does that make sense?
Maybe I'm dumb. I don't. So you agree with hoflation? You're saying that it is harder for everyone in general.
No, well, I'm saying, so I somewhat agree with it, but I'm saying it's not harder for everyone. It's not harder for the guys at the very top. For those, it's never been easy. It's not harder for the Leo DiCaprios. And then there's a percentage of men, maybe like 20%, for whom it stayed about the same. So these are guys who are not at the very top, but they're above average. And I'm not just talking about money, by the way, because a lot of rich guys struggle. We're talking game, social status, social circle, looks. We're talking like everything cumulatively that plays into your role of being attractive as a man. So there's a small percentage for men for whom it's easier. There's maybe 20, 25% for whom it stayed the same. And for the bottom, whatever, 50%, it is harder, because I look at it as like girls are a fixed commodity. There's only so many girls to go around. Generally, we have a 50-50 ratio. So if more girls are going towards the top, that by default means there's less girls for the bottom.
Okay. And you're saying that the average guy is having a harder time getting those type of girls just because they're all at the top?
Yeah, so I've seen this like a lot with my coaching clients. I mean, commonly what I hear is like, yeah, Alex, 7 years ago I was doing pretty well on Tinder, but now I'm getting no matches. Or like, hey, 7 years ago I was doing pretty good with girls, and now like I can't seem to get anything. Yeah, I see this like all the time. And also, like, this is supported by statistics. If you look at, the lack of the sexlessness amongst men from 2008, it was like 8%. Now it's like 27%. So, my personal coaching experiences and, official statistics confirm that, the average man is having less and less sex.
Yeah, I think that, again, it goes back to men not understanding female nature. And I think like they just, like back then, I would say women were more naive. It was like, oh, if you interact with the guys, there's a good chance you're probably going to date him. Nowadays, the chance of you getting played probably a lot higher than you expect. So I wouldn't say that women are going to be swiping right all the time, because she's not expecting to actually, like, she has to pick more wisely when who she sleeps with nowadays. That's it. Like back then, it was a little bit more innocent. And as far as guys saying it's harder to get with women, I would say like it is harder, because why? Because you just want to sleep with them. But as far as getting into a relationship, I think that it's just kind of like a normal standard to actually get your shit together as a man. It's not like you have to be 6 figures. I think that as a whole, you shouldn't just be a bum. And I think like what now I'm hearing is they're expecting women to just be like accepting the bare minimums and the mediocre, which that I don't agree with.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's a lot of guys who are actually relationship worthy. They have their shit together. They understand all the theory, but they still can't meet girls. They're not able to get their foot in the door, because in order to get into a relationship, you have to be able to get your foot in the door, right? And they're just not able to get their foot in the door. And like I see this like all the time. So yeah, I agree with what you said. Like, it's important to get your shit together and be able to lead, but you have to also get your foot in the door. And if you're not getting your foot in the door, like you might have 10, 15 years ago, then yeah, it's getting harder. Like, I mean, just take a look at
get your foot in the door. What do you mean? Is it like a financial thing, or like is there
No,
like?
no, I'm not talking about financial at all. I'm talking about like actually getting a date with a girl. Like, what happens before a relationship? The first date, getting the first date. That could be on a dating app. That could be, you meet her at a bar. That could be through friends. But like, it's interesting that like think about like 50, 60, 70 years ago, most people were meeting their significant other through either the church or through family or through friends, right? That's just kind of the way it was. So let's say you were a guy who was like lower on the value pole. Well, you still had your church that was going to introduce you to a girl. You still had all those institutions. Whereas now a lot of those institutions are going away, which again works out well for the guys at the very top, because those girls that would have normally been dating someone with their church might be hooking up with Leonardo DiCaprio, but it doesn't work out well for the guys at the bottom.
Yeah, but do you think that it's because this generation lacks like some sort of like moral compass or like value that actually you could meet people? And I think like we've kind of limited ourselves to just thinking it's like social media or like this materialistic idea of what social media says like we have to be for dating. I think like when I was talking to someone earlier when he was like saying, oh, like you're only gonna meet a girl at a bar or a club. And I'm like, dude, that's garbage, bro. I was like, do you know that there's different types of people? There's introverts, there's people who are anime girls, there's people who don't go to the bar and club. And I think there's different ways to meet the person you want to be with based on your demographic or whatever it is you're into. I don't think people engage with that anymore because we're mostly just kind of expecting like this online aspect of like dating online or maybe social media, which is online, and maybe like the bar and club. I think we've limited ourselves as far as dating, and that's why they feel like hoflation is really a thing. But I don't really think that.
Well, I do agree bad beliefs play a role, but I don't think it's the main role. Are you familiar with the saying, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the income, like this is just like a matter of fact, the income inequality has gotten worse and worse in the last 30 years, right? So the people at the top have way more money now than they did 40 years ago compared to the people at the bottom, right? What's the reason for that? Well, I think one of the biggest reasons for that is technology, right? Because, you know, you can make even more money with technology, like you see what I'm saying, right?
Right.
Yeah, so the same thing has actually happened with pussy, so as to speak, or you talk about like girls or whatever. The guys at the very top, like there's just okay. Let me try to give you an analogy like this. So let's say you're a guy who's living in Iowa, right? You're living in a city with maybe 50,000 people, you know, guys, girls, whatever, right? Pretty even ratio. So like 20 years ago, the hot girl or even the average girl in your town, she would date someone else in that town. She would probably meet them at a bar. She would meet them through her friends, through her family, blah, blah, blah. But there wasn't really an option for her to date a high value guy. The only way she could do that is she like traveled herself, flew herself out to Los Angeles, like got an apartment there, hung out at certain bars, looked for, it was very high. It was very tough for her to do that. Versus nowadays, any semi-decently attractive girl has literally dudes from all across the world blowing up her DMs. So nowadays, she doesn't need to do any of that. She just needs to accept an invitation, get flown out, and she can hook up with this high-value guy, right? So it's just the access has completely changed with social media and technology.
But do you think that like, well, so what do you define as an average girl like that's getting that type of attention?
I don't know. I mean, I would say like a girl who's like a 6, who's like decent looking, but not like super hot.
And you think those type of girls are getting flown out and getting attentions from like quote unquote high value guys?
No, I think most of them are not accepting the offers. So I don't like, unlike Fresh, I don't think like 30% of girls are being flown out. I think it's a tiny percentage. But I think that those girls are getting interest. They're just ignoring that interest. They don't really take that seriously. They're like, oh, this is weird. But like just going through like, you know, doing my podcast and asking girls what's in their DMs, like a lot of girls would be like, yeah, I had this like celebrity reach out to me. You know, I didn't meet up with him because, you know, I'm not that kind of girl, but I don't know what she really did or she didn't do. But the point is like, yeah, like a lot of the opportunities are there. It's just that most girls don't really act on that because they find that weird.
I think that's like, so I mean, you're on social media and you're content creator. So the type of girls that are going to be on the show, you know, on your show and that are interactive are going to be girls that are going to get attention from like people with those type of platforms, which I wouldn't say she's an average girl. I think average girls don't get those type of attentions at all. Like, I don't really see a guy that with some sort of status or value kind of stoop. If anything, he'd probably be, it's a kind of a joke for him to actually stoop that low. Not saying that she isn't worth anything, but it's almost like you have caviar money. Why are you eating ramen noodles? It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, Angela, it is very, very brutal. The reality is like crazier than you might think. I would, you said something about why would a successful guy do that with an average girl? And then before that, what did you say right before that?
I said it so fast. I don't even know. I'm just saying the reference of like, I don't really see why a high value guy or a guy within those type of standards would reach out to an average girl just because it's not like, not within the perimeter. And again, like a girl who isn't on social media like that or even on the radar. I don't really see how that's going to be. How are you going to cross path? Like,
yeah, so it would be through social media, through Instagram or through a dating app. The reason they would do that is because they simply don't have other better options. So like, again, like when I did all these experiments that I did, I was a little bit flabbergasted by the results. Like with the really obese girl, the experiment, right? It wasn't just like average looking dudes would match up with her. It was like really, no homo, really good looking dudes who looked like they had a lot of shit going on social media, but they were like so down to hang out with her. And that like really begs the question, why? Well, you know, they probably just like are kind of a little bit thirsty and a little bit desperate, and they don't realize that they could do probably better. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, we saw a lot of that. You know, like guys, again, the girl was like a 2 or a 1 in her photos, but guys who are, again, no homo, 8s, 9s, 10s, like fucking trying to hit her up. And look, a lot of those guys would not date her, but some of them would. Some of them definitely would. I mean, there was a famous TikTok that I reacted to where it was like a guy who's like a Giga Chad dating a girl who's like obese, right? And they were like in an actual relationship. So like that happens all the time. So yeah, a lot of these ultra high value guys, they'll smash and pass, but some of them will actually date the girl who's like beneath their value threshold. And it just simply has to do with you know, just being in a place of scarcity.
And would you say, like, is there a percentage of like women that are on social media and women that aren't? Is there like a number on that? Would you happen to know by any chance?
Um, I don't know the official number. I can take a guess. Are we talking about women who don't have social media, period, or women who have their Instagram like set to private or something?
Women who just aren't active. Like, I mean, like maybe I could be wrong, but when I was in Tampa prior to using being a content creator, I all my friends were like me, and they were like very low active or no social media. They were like pretty boring and vanilla. So I just don't see how. I don't know the percentage or stats on those type of girls and how many girls are pretty average. I'd have to say yes, there are hoes in every city and girls who are very active on social media, but there's also like a subsection of women who don't even engage into this type of world. So I'm just curious as to if those girls are even being acknowledged because people don't get offline anymore, or if we're just strictly going off of hoflation based on people online.
Yeah, so I would say it's something like maybe 1 out of 3 girls doesn't have social media, maybe 20%. But I think there's a significant percentage of women who have social media, but they're not active on it, or they have it set to private. Like my girlfriend would be like an example of that. Like she actually deleted her Instagram, but she used to have her Instagram, but it was set on private, and she wouldn't engage with like random people. It was just like for keeping up with her friends and whatnot. I think if we add those girls in, the percentage jumps up to like 55, 60%. So most girls, yes, most girls are not engaging with random millionaires. Doesn't mean they're not getting those invites, by the way. They could be getting those invites. It's a lot harder when the girl has her Instagram set to private because she has to approve you, I think, for you to send a DM. But they're just not engaging in it at all. But again, it doesn't really take all those girls. That's kind of why I said earlier, there's a percentage of guys for whom it stayed the same. Those are the kind of guys who can meet normie girls in real life. They can meet girls at the bar. They have a good social circle. But the place where they can meet girls in real life has shrunk a little bit because, you know, you can't no longer do it at church. It's less common that your family will introduce you to someone. People on average report having a lot less friendships nowadays. That's an important statistics. Like people have less friends nowadays. So the environment for which you can meet girls in real life has shrunk. But if you're a part of a percentage of guys who has that long, healthy environment, then for you, it's probably stayed the same. But again, if you're like kind of like a normal guy, you don't have that. You don't have a super big social circle. You're seeing that, number one, your places for meeting like again, the average guy has way less friends. You have like 1 or 2 friends, and the only friends that he has is a bunch of bros. So he can't really help you out. You don't really go to church or belong to any kind of club. Your choices are either, a dating app, Instagram cold DMs, or like a bar or something like that, and that's like, for that, that's when it gets like the pool has kind of shrunk for you.
Right. So the pool shrunk based on the fact that people have minimal core values or any other values in life other than being on social media and just really capitalizing on that. So you narrow down your own option as a man or woman being on social media.
Can you explain that? Maybe a reward there, because I'm confused.
Because to me, it's like it sounds like people don't actually engage into real life anymore. So it's like we're frustrated the fact that women have more accessibilities to these high value guys or these celebrities, and it's more so like, why is that the only other option to why like that word hoflation or ho gap or whatever it is exists, based on the simple fact that we've narrowed down our own options from being on social media? Like, why does it have to be the only route to engaging with other people?
But if you're a guy who has like 1 or 2 friends, like real friends, like you can sure build up more friends, but at that point in time, your options are more limited versus that same person living 20 years ago could have had 4 or 5 friends. So their ability to meet girls through a social circle. We're not talking about what ought to be. We're just talking about what is. And, people have way less friends nowadays. Therefore, their chances of meeting someone through like social circle is significantly smaller, right?
Yeah, yes, we're talking about that, but I think that's the core problem of because people don't have actual lives outside of social media, and that's why the word hoflation exists. That's what I'm saying? Is that fair to say or no?
I agree with you that that's a big part of the problem. I don't think it's the only part of the problem. It's a big part of the problem is that people don't really have lives outside the internet. But I'm just simply talking about what is. And a lot of like 20 years ago, everyone had a life outside the internet because the internet was barely a thing. Well, okay, 30 years ago, okay, it was barely a
Okay.
thing. 15 years ago, it was a thing, but there was not too many people addicted to the internet. Now
Mhm.
there's a significant percentage of people who are addicted to the internet. They
Yeah.
spend most of the time online. It's only getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm somewhat mildly guilty of this myself. But so in terms of the what is, for those people, they are suffering from this thing called hoflation in a way.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we agree with that then. Cool.
All right. All right. Let's move on to, do you have any kind of, are you in a rush at all or you have time?
No, I'm good. Good on time.
Two-parent income are necessary for the West, so Sam doesn't exist. What does SAHM mean?
Stay at home mom.
Oh,
Did I spell it wrong? Probably
no,
did.
you just gave me the abbreviation. I've never heard that before. The why stay-at-homes don't exist. It doesn't exist anymore. Well, what do you mean by that? Because there's obviously some stay-at-home moms, right? Are you just saying it's less common?
I would say, okay, so I've noticed this conversation, and again, maybe a lot of what I'm saying are coming from the red pill because that's the only disagreements I have with the fact that they want a girl to just stay at home and be super traditional and just be like making butter from scratch. And I'm like, listen, like this is the West. The girl you're meeting has probably already been working. You both can work and figure this shit out. And I think like, can you survive off of like a minimum income of like what was it, 50K or 60K? You could survive, but I think it's important to recognize we also could thrive beyond that because like you don't really want to. Like, I don't want my kids in public school. I don't want my kids eating GMO food. Like, I want my kids to have a better life. So I think like we have this idea that maybe one guy just works and the one chick just stays home. I think it's a limited mindset and it's like a destruction for the future because 10 years will go by, inflation will happen again. You're gonna be broke, you're gonna be miserable, sexless, and so on.
Well, it really just depends on who. If you're a guy who's making like $500,000 a year, then that mindset is totally fine, right? Because you have the money. But if you're someone who's making like average median income, like 50, I think it's 45 or 50,000, then yeah, if you want to raise your kids, you're going to both have to be work. I do think though, you have to make a calculation. Like, let's say your kids are really, you just have kids, right? Like, someone's going to have to stay home with the kids, or you're going to have to get a nanny. So, like, if the woman, for example, is making like 25,000 a year, and it's actually going to be more, expensive to get the nanny, then it probably makes sense for her to stay at home until the kids get a little bit older and they can, basically like hang out themselves. But yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with both people working. In my family, my mom and my dad worked. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But in some situations, it does make sense to
Yeah, I
have.
think like financially, if it costs more to put a nanny there, sure. I think like also it's important so you can prioritize like because for me, if I asked anyone like who do you prioritize in the relationship, I would say even with kids, my kids would be safe, my kids would be great, whatever. But like I think it's important to prioritize your partner because that's kind of the foundation of the relationship. If you don't have a good relationship with your partner, then everything else crumbles. Most women would say, "Oh, I put my kids first," but the problem with that, I think the relationship fails, becomes a sexless marriage. And on top of that, it's like you don't prioritize yourself as a person, and then your kid is just young and absorbing literally nothing important besides like the fundamentals of do I feel love? Am I safe? Do I need to get an education by like 5? They go to school. So to me, it's like you have to recognize, not you, but like women have to recognize like, yeah, sure, you could stay at home for the first couple of years, but eventually you're going to be back working just to kind of find your footing back into reality, which is still important because you want to connect with your partner.
So would you say it's wrong for women to put their children first?
Yes. The reason why is I think put them first as far as like safety. Are they safe? Do they have a roof over their head? But I think like when you tend to just coddle them and like spoiled your kids, you end up having a very sexual. I think like what happens in relationships is women forget you have to be a mom, you have to be a person, and you have to be a wife. And I think like they forget to be the wife. They no longer do the stuff and initiative in bed and all that stuff. So what happens is you put all your focus onto your kids, and then your husband just becomes the working man who has like no identity besides just being the dad who grills on Saturdays.
I see your point. I mean, I would say you can definitely put your children first without like overly cuddling them. You know, like I would say like my mom definitely put me first, but I wouldn't say like I was spoiled or something. I had a job when I was like 13 years old, you know. So and you know, we were like upper middle class, so my parents could afford to give me everything I wanted. They just didn't because they wanted me to like develop a good etiquette. So I think you can definitely put your children first without over spoiling them. I mean, I would say that I think most mothers would say like, okay, like if you ask most mothers, okay, someone has to die, either you or your kids. Who's gonna die? They would say, kill me. Don't kill the kids. I think that's like the vast majority of mothers would say that.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Like, oh, so if you ask a husband, who would he save? He would save the wife, not the kids, because to him it's like I can't live my life.
Oh no, I think they would pick the kids too. Most husbands, yeah.
Most husbands, I would disagree. I think I feel like personally, I could be wrong, but I feel like the husband would be like, no, I had the kids because I wanted to have a family with my wife. I don't see a man choosing the kids over the wife because it's like kind of pointless to raise a family without the wife because she brings the nurturing part.
Oh yeah, no, I guess yeah, I definitely disagree on that. I think most people will love their kids more than anything. I mean, it's yeah, like I mean, I don't know. I've seen this like so many times, but yeah, like people like kids, and then the second category is parents. But actually, like you're wired to love your kids the most, and then parents probably right above that, and then maybe your husband or your partner could be like either equal to the parents, slightly higher, slightly less. But the person you're gonna love the most in this world is gonna be your kids. Like for
I think
sure.
like yeah, I wouldn't say like it's comparing the love. I think it's just the priority of the relationship itself. I think like I truly believe in discipline in all relationships, including with yourself, your partner, your family, your kids. I think like what happens like because you love them so much, you tend to spoil them to the degree of like they're not able to develop their own personality or their goals in life. Like I maybe it's just anecdotal for me thinking about my parents. I had both parents, and to me it was like they didn't really do anything crazy except for the fact like what they were both in the house and one was working and one was always around. It was more so like if anything, I couldn't wait to get out of the house. So to me, I feel like most people go through that where it's like your parents end up their entire identity circles around you. And it's like you don't get to develop with what you want to be in life. Like like to me, I think that's really important. Also, to not see your mom and dad have a healthy relationship because he's always working to provide this lifestyle for both. I think that's also another problem because we end up putting the kids first. Because as biologically as a woman, once you push out the kid, obviously you're gonna be super attached because you carried the kid for 9 months. Completely get that. But I think it's also important to recognize like what happens if you put the kid always first and say, you know what, like tonight is date night. I need to take care of my husband, XYZ. I think that's also like really important because I think the husband's happiness or the wife's happiness, for the kid to see that, okay, my parents are a unit. Let me not like feel like one person to favor over the other. I think it's important to recognize that there's a unity within the parents.
Okay, I don't know if we necessarily disagree. We're just kind of talking about, I think, slightly different things. I think you can totally, as a mother, as a father, put your kids first without spoiling them while still being a good parent. And I do agree, 100% of the time in all situations, you're like picking the kid. So the kid is like, I want to go to the movie. And it's like you have date night with your partner, and you're like, oh, let's go to the movie, kiddo. You know, that's probably not a good situation. So I'm talking about generalities, right? But I think it's not mutually exclusive. You do one or you do the other. I think you can have priority ladder kids, then you have your partner, then you have your family, then you have your friends, then you have your community, right? So it's not like you have to either like love your kids or love your husband. You can love both of them, but I think it's just like, and I don't even know if that's right or wrong. I just think that the vast majority of people would pick their kids in like a life or death situation over their partner.
Um, yeah, I think that that's what it is in general society. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Vasectomies in the 20s are stupid. I agree with you. Tomasi has studied from prohibition. He needs to be in a nursing home. I agree with you on that one too. Overall, men and women are corrupted. Both need improvement. Hopefully, this helps. Yeah, can you expand on that corrupted point?
I think the corruption comes from again the disconnect of men and women not understanding what we need from each other to be happy to coexist. And again, I think like women would ask other women for dating advice when it comes to men. I think it's important to have a male figure in your life that you trust. Like I grew up around boys, so I was taught what the general male nature liked. But at the same time, I also had to develop my own um, thoughts, so I understood like how to put empathy into the relationship so it's not just like a black and white rule when it comes to dating a guy. And I think like we both kind of men and women don't understand that from each other. We expect each other to treat each other the same way we treat. Like if you date a girl, like an amateur guy, you'd probably expect like, oh, I talk to my boys like this all the time. Why do I have to speak to you in this manner? But it's just a matter that she's a girl, so you have to change your tonality.
Sorry, I was just getting water. But yeah, I basically agree with everything you said. I don't think there's too much to explore on that point. We went through all the things you've said to me. I guess the follow-up question I have, what are some things you disagree with Destiny on?
Okay. I don't know. My conversation with Destiny was like so quick because it was like kind of hard because like, we're both kind of it was kind of like talking to you. So throughout, I think I was like there for like 45 minutes. We lived like 15 minutes from each other. So for me, it was almost hard to disagree on anything. I think the only thing he probably wanted to give me some pushback on was like Andrew Tate, but I didn't really look into Andrew Tate stuff. So I don't really know what was going on there. And then as far as relationships,
What was your position on Andrew Tate?
So I didn't really keep up with his current core drama of the things that he was accused of. For me, it was at the basis of what I've seen about him. I agreed with a lot of the things he said, as far as like it seemed like he was a guy who's in a relationship who has kids or has, that sort of like core value of how it feels like to be a man. So it's like I didn't really agree with him with that, but what I disagreed with him, it was like his the way that he described what he did with the cam business, because I think as anyone who owns a business, there are certain things you have to do that you shouldn't say, and I think like once you say it out loud, it just shows people this manipulative side of you that you may have to do it for your own reasons as a business owner, but you shouldn't say it out loud because it just makes you look super shady and manipulative, and I think that's where he failed at. I personally think.
I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, if I say the shit that I had to do for the salon that we opened, it'd be like, damn, you're a shady ass bitch. But I'm like, dude, like,
what did you? Okay, you can tell me offline. I'm curious now. What do you have to do for the salon? I feel like a salon is pretty like like.
No, I can say it broadly. Like I would say, like for example, it's important to recognize like there's a difference between someone who opens a business and someone who works for the business. And when you open a business, you care about the ins and outs of it. You care about how long it's going to last. You want to make sure that you can balance it out. But like when people work there, they don't really care about if the business collapsed. They just care about getting their paycheck. And sometimes it's important to recognize like, this is why I have a hard time talking to the Redpill people, because it's like facts over feelings. But at the end of the day, I could say to them like, do your fucking job. But to them, it's like, okay, I am doing my job, but you want them to do more. You want them to care about it. You want them to care about customer service. So it's like, I have to learn how to kind of butter them up almost in like a manipulative type of way, just to make sure they feel good so they can do their job factually and beyond. And at the end of the day, if I told them just to do their job, they would do it. And if you pay them, they would do it. But you really want them to want to do their job and beyond. So it becomes like super manipulative and tactic, what it seems like. But like after learning, like everybody has like an emotional need that you have to tend to. And once you start doing it, it's really easy. They're all happy doing it. And to me, it's like, as long as everyone's happy doing it, they just didn't know that you had it in you to be a nice person or you're willing to extend. That's really where I would say like it seems like kind of shitty. We can go into details offline, but as far as that, I would have to say learning that aspect of it, it didn't feel good in the beginning because everyone's like, why do you have to stoop that low? My family's like, why do you have to kiss anyone's ass? I'm like, dude, I don't want to, but it's like, we need workers. And
that doesn't seem shady to me at all. It just seems like you're a passionate business owner. As long as you're not like stealing or lying from your employees, I don't see that as shady. I mean, what you're describing is an issue I've had in my business too. There's like 4 or 5 people behind the scenes of PWF. The solution that I found, there's several things I found. Is number one is to do a profit split, so actually give them a financial incentive in the business doing better. And number two, really give them encouragement. Like if they do something, like really be like, hey man, you did a great job on that article. That was awesome. I think positive encouragement works a lot better than negative scorn. And of course, sometimes if they do something wrong, you do have to tell them. I think also at the same time is kind of how you tell them, right? You're like, dude, you're a dumb motherfucker, can't do shit. They're going to shut off. But if you're like, hey man, listen, you usually do a really good job with the articles, but today I noticed that you really didn't take your time and that was disappointing. They're going to be more likely like, well, shit, I don't want to disappoint this person. But yeah, none of that sounds shady to me at all. It just sounds like
we could talk about the rest off camera, but for the most part, I'd have to say, I think that's why I keep saying, like, I don't think the people in the Red Pill space understand until you have kids or have a business or something you care about beyond your selfish, like self-serving desires. It's really hard to actually develop that feeling of like, I have to do this, not because I want to, because I have a choice. So it's not, it crosses over to, it's not facts over feelings. It's like, what facts is there within the feelings? You have to figure it out because everyone's feeling something and you're going to have to give them what they want. So they give you what you need. Oops. So I think that's one thing, like when I hear like Andrew Tate speaks, I could see his need why he did what he did, but then it crosses over to like, you know, did you feel bad for doing that? And like you have to recognize at a certain point like how you said it and why you did it, whether you own up to it or you rephrase what you actually meant. And I don't think he did that. And then like looking at some of his videos, I think you're familiar with Don the Duke.
Yeah.
I was on him for like, I was on his thingy for like a couple of minutes and he was showing me, because I don't keep up with like Andrew Tate drama. So after seeing a couple of his shit, I was like, oh no, like I can't believe he said that, because I didn't really look into it. And after seeing what he said about some of the chicks and how he didn't feel bad, and I was like, oh man, you have to show the world that there's some sort of empathy or compassion if you're gonna navigate in this red pill world. Because if not, you're gonna just only win on the conservative red pill side, and you kind of want to like overly. You want to be able to like mask your way through society and not piss off to you, but still stand on your value as a person. And I don't think that that's what's happening there. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, a big part of what got him in trouble is his tongue and the things he says and some of his statements. Yeah, like, by the way, for anyone in the chat is not familiar, Andrew Tate was indicted either today or yesterday, so he's officially indicted. And I called it. I knew he was going to get indicted. We'll see how the case plays out. They say in Romania these cases can take 2, 3, 4 years, so it might be a while before we know the outcome. Hey, I hope it works out well for him. You know, I like the dude, but big but. There's specifically two things that are pretty much facts at this point that make me really not like that aspect of him. The first is stealing money from the OnlyFans girls. And he's just outright admitted. He's like, hey, listen, you know, we would go 50-50, but then I would tell him the taxes are like thousands of dollars. So I would actually give them 30%. And this is what you can do, because they don't really look at taxes. They're kind of dumb. And it's like, in like the counter argument that red pillars make is like, well, at least they're getting something. But like, yeah, but still it's wrong to lie to your employees.
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's where we draw the line at. Like, right is right, wrong is wrong, and it's like at this, you're still deceiving, and when you're deceiving, that's when it becomes like fucked up, because you could be stealing $1 or $100, you're still stealing. So
yeah, it's wrong either way. And then the second one is like basically scamming dudes. So he said that, and again, to be fair, this was a few years ago when he was doing like the cam thing. He would basically have these girls agree to meet up with random dudes for money. So the guys would send them like thousands of dollars, and then he would have the girl flake on the guys last minute, so the guys would get really butthurt, and then he would have the girl gaslight the guy and make it seem like it was his fault, so that she could get more money from him later on. And that's just like straight up like theft. Like,
yeah, it is. It also sucks because he's more so standing on like the male empowerment side. So it's like, how can you sit here and like men's mental health and men empowerment, and then you talk for like what men need to, you know, be, and then you do that, and it's like, oh, you're kind of double dutching on like what your role in society is. So I don't know. It's just like, after hearing all that, I was like, damn, man, I really wanted to say you were innocent, but like in that part, I'd say it sucks. Now my fiance would say like he doesn't like the word human trafficking. That's what he doesn't like. He's like, he doesn't like the word that's the word that they're slapping him with. And I was like, we were kind of going back and forth earlier on that, because I was like, wait. But like in my world, it was like, but he was deceiving the girls in the sense, like, I don't know if this is the truth or not, but it was like, you know, they were telling the girls, you can go over here and live a great life with me in Romania, and they turned out to be like 5 other girls. And I have like a big like ick when it comes to deceiving women. Like, I don't like being deceived, and I think I've been in a couple of those scenarios when I moved to Miami for work. And like, I have a big pet peeve with men who feel like they have to lie, steal, or cheat their way to be successful. And that's where I'm like, oh yeah, no, I don't stand by that. But I don't know if that would be the right word to slap him with also.
Well, I think there's like degrees of morality. I think deceiving is wrong, but I think theft is more wrong than just deception. And yeah, those are the two things that I probably take the biggest issue with Andrew Tate. I don't believe he's actually being charged for those things. But those, like, from what I've seen, those are the things that I probably take the most issue with. But hey, you know, I hope it works out well for him. I like the dude. But yeah, those two things, they're pretty shady, and you're gonna have a hard time backwards rationalizing that if you're an Andrew Tate fan, because the argument I've seen is like, oh well, you know, sure, he was stealing money from the girl, but she was still getting more than she would have if she wasn't working with Andrew Tate. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. How is this an argument?
Yeah, no, quite accurate. Then this is really hard to find something to disagree with you on. Honestly, what do you disagree with when it comes to Destiny?
I'm just too reasonable. Me and Destiny actually agree on like the vast majority of things. We've disagreed on Passport Bros, He is more anti-passport bros than you. We had an interesting debate about that. He disagreed with me about the war in Ukraine. We got into a pretty interesting debate about that. Other than that, it's like random statements he's made, and then like once we start talking, I have him clarify. Another thing we disagree on is one-way open relationships. So he believes that a girl who's going to get into a one-way open relationship has low self-esteem, and like try to explain to him why he's wrong about that. But he seems to be a little stubborn on that one. The funny thing is, Destiny has actually met my girlfriend, and like I met his. So if anyone should know that, like my girlfriend's, I would say the issue with my girlfriend, her self-esteem is too high. She's like almost too, it's like almost too like. It's like, calm down, man. You take yourself a little too seriously. But yeah, so probably those things. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was hard for me to find something to disagree with him about, honestly. But at the same time, that was my first interaction with him, like in person. After again the same thing, like after a year of me criticizing him. So I honestly was like really uncomfortable with being disagreeable, even though I was trying to find it, and I was like, what do I not agree on? I was like, I couldn't figure anything out, so it was really hard to get to that point.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Destiny loves that, like that, because that creates better, spicier content.
He likes it, but I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't know what to disagree. I did it already, and it wasn't logical the first time I did it. And the second time, I was like, I kind of understand the broad spectrum of like, maybe that's my biggest problem. Like, I'll probably have to figure it out, like where I stand with everything. But it's like, I don't agree with a lot of things for me personally. But when other people do it, as long as you can back up why you're doing it, I'm more likely to understand. All right, fine. If that makes you happy, whatever. But if it's harmful towards anyone else, including yourself long term, that's when I'm gonna be like, okay, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Then I'll probably fight you to the end of it until you understand what I'm saying, or we'll just won't talk. But for the most part, if you could back up why you're doing it, like you said, like novelty and your girl's just, high self-esteem, cool, great. At least at least it makes sense if it adds up, cool. But I'm not gonna sit here and like fight from the one statistic that I know or the two anecdotal people I know. Like I'm not gonna do that. And that
right, you're looking at contradictions, right? If there's contradictions with MLD, like there's a big contradiction being saying like, hey, I want women who are not damaged, I'm not damaged, and then his behavior, right? So that's like hypocrisy.
Yes.
Same thing with Rollo, I think you took issue with. And you're also looking at harm to other people. So if the behavior is not contradictory and is not causing harm to other people, you view it as a preference, which is kind of how I view it too. Like I don't know. I don't really like pork, right? But I'm not going to debate you on if you like to eat pork. That's just like kind of a preference. But if you eating pork, it means you have to fucking like, I don't know. I'm trying to think what you would do. You have to go out and murder like 5 children in order to get like a piece of bacon or something like that. Then it's like, okay, that's a little different story. But yeah, do you have any questions you want to ask me?
I was trying to figure it out. I think that's why I was like kind of sneaking it in there between the kids and the one open end thing. And I'm trying to see what else. I don't think there was really much that I could find that I didn't understand or disagreed with at this point. So exactly what is your direction with the whole space? Like, are you just, I really don't know. Like, do you speak for men and women or just men? Like what exactly?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me quickly answer this, and then I'll answer your question just a little bit longer. I agree with that. I've acknowledged that earlier. I do agree with that. It's not for the vast majority. Yeah, it's a little bit of a niche thing, right? And I've always been pretty transparent about that. The vast majority of the advice I give is for men. I've tried giving advice to women. The views are really terrible, so I don't do it. I have a 10% of my YouTube audience is female. I have some passionate female fans who I really love and appreciate. I've had them reach out on Instagram and whatnot. But they generally watch my advice to men so they can reverse engineer how men are. So yeah, most of my advice is for men. I feel like that's my niche. I would love to get a bigger female audience because every time I'm on the street and I get approached, it's a dude. It's not a hot chick who's approaching me. It's a dude, right? Which I appreciate. But, it'd be nice if like some hot girls approach me as well because they like my channel. So yeah, in terms of that, it's primarily to men. Is the question like, what would I like to do with the channel or?
No, I just kind of wanted to see like what would your direction when it comes to people. So do you think like women approach men at all, or do you not find that really a thing? Because most people don't think women approach men, and I would personally.
Sometimes they do, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
They'll typically do it in a more subtle way, though. They won't come up like, "Hey, I think you're hot," and that can happen. But more time, they'll be like, "Hey, so are you from around here?" Like they'll kind of like just hope the guy shows initiative. But some girls will be direct. I've had girls do that to me. Not often, but it does happen. The girl's like, "Hey, you're really cute. Come here," stuff like that. But most of the time, it's a man approaching the girl. But a small percentage of the time, yeah, sure, it happens.
I agree. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is brutal. I'm having this. I really don't like where I'm sitting at in this. It was more fun when I was like hardcore red pill. I could disagree with so much more people, but now at this point in my life, I don't really like this because it's like it's kind of hard to disagree with anything. So I think that
That's okay. We don't need to like fucking argue. We can have like good
no, just for the sake of like debating spaces. That's the struggle.
Yeah. Well, maybe some of my chat can help. Ask her about the big house. Was it like Oz? What does she mean? Oh, he means okay. It's a personal question. I'll remove it. I didn't understand that initially. Do you agree with Destiny when it comes to choking out your girlfriend? Do you know what that means? Choking out? Is he just talking about
He's been trolling in the comment for like a hot minute, so I stopped reading the username on that one.
Oh no, this guy's actually regular on my channel. Fuck. I cannot imagine Destiny saying like you should choke out your girlfriend in a violent way, so I'm assuming it's in a sexual way. I mean, dude, if she's down with that and you're down with that, then just be careful, man. Be careful, man. Don't kill her, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a few super chats. Don't hold back, Angela. Handle this clown like MLT.
What?
One of your fans.
I'm sorry.
Just wondering if you checked out that joking wish before. Have you heard of this article?
Oh wait, he told me about this. Joking. I'm sorry, friend. I didn't look it up. Joking the slapper out. Have you heard of it? Because I haven't heard of it.
Never heard of this in my life.
Joking. He sends me the most randomest things, and I think the other one he told me was like Karen something. But no, I don't know, and I'm sorry. My brain's been kind of funky lately. Any other randomness?
Repeal the 19th or make women register for the draft. Also, all men need to consider divorce and prenup, especially for blue-collar working men. I do think that it's good to get a prenup. Repeal the 19th or make women register for the draft.
When's the last time anyone's gotten drafted? Why is this even so?
We haven't had a draft in 50 years. I don't think it's unless we go to war with China. Even if we do, it's not going to be a on the ground war. It's just our technology has evolved too much, so it's unrealistic for us to ever have a draft again. It would be political suicide for any candidate to do that. So it's not going to happen. That's the thing. It just our military technology has transformed. We no longer need like troops on the ground. Generally, we use we send missiles, we use planes and whatnot. Okay, Roger Moore's first two wives physically abused him. Do you have any thoughts on that? I didn't even know what
she physically abused him. Like, did she beat him or did she sexually abuse him? I'm confused. Like, what is this pertaining to? Like, I don't understand this.
I don't know. Okay. My father taught me it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. If you sleep around, you're a pig, and he was popular with these in his youth. Yeah, I'm not a fan of like shaming language for people who have who enjoy having a lot of sex, for men or for women. I don't think those people should be shamed. It's just it's like shaming someone for preferring to be vegan. You don't like to eat meat. You're a pussy. It's like, well, he just prefers to be vegan, right? So it's just a preference thing. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think we're kind of on the same stance with that.
Yo, what's up, Angela? Shout out Playing with Fire as well. Just wanted to stop by, support the civil discourse law. Cool. Thank you. Appreciate you coming by.
Thank you, V.
W Green Pill. Thank you for the super chat.
Is that what they're calling it now? Green Pill?
I've never heard of it. It's called Blue Pill, so I don't know what Green Pill is. The women have no blame in not reading the paperwork, but the thing is that wasn't in the paperwork. Like, he would tell them the paperwork was like, we're doing this 50-50, and then he would say, oh, by the way, we had to pay this much in taxes, and but I'll give you 50% of what was left over. So effectively, he wound up keeping 60, 70, whatever percent. That's the issue, right? It wasn't just being deceptive in the paperwork. Okay, do we have any other good questions before we wrap up, guys?
I think so.
Okay, here's a question. What kind of relationship do you have with Allende from Authentic Alphas?
Are you asking me or you? Because
Yeah, I think. Oh wait, actually, yeah, it is for me. We're friendly, like somewhere between acquaintances and friends. I like the dude. We've hung out a bunch of times. I wouldn't say we're like close friends, but yeah, we're cool.
he's
You
all
know,
right.
he said that he doesn't want to do debates anymore, so I've been respectful of that and not inviting him on there. I personally love having him on for a debate because it turns into a shit show and the live viewers are count. But he's told me he doesn't want to do debates, so it kind of is what it is. Bring her on in place of Destiny and Zerka for Cold Approach Challenge. I don't know how that would work since she's a girl, though. But I'm assuming are you into women at all?
No, absolutely
Yeah,
not.
yeah, that would kind of. And she's about to get married.
Yeah,
But
and don't want to get vetoed out of my race, but thanks though.
for Angela, how does she feel about Andrew Tate constantly ranting about how he hates? I've never heard him do that.
Yeah, I've never heard him hate women before. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've
I've
never.
heard him, like maybe. Actually, no, I haven't heard him shit on women. I think he's more of like the classier side when it comes to how he talks about a lot of the women. Just person, even his brother, honestly. And I'm not kissing his ass when I say that, guys. So give me a break.
Yeah, he says, I've heard him say multiple times, I love women. I want to protect women. I want to take care of women. I mean, I've heard him say that countless times. I've never actually heard him talk about hating women. He's made jokes, maybe, but, and you guys know I'm not one to like protect Andrew Tate. I've been critical of things that I find issue with him, but I've never heard any kind of hatred towards women. Other red pillars, yes, and you guys probably know who they are, but not Andrew Tate. I haven't seen that.
Oh Lord, I want to hear about that shit. Okay.
Here's an interesting question, Angela. Is Destiny a high value man in your opinion?
I think high value is subjective. So I mean, he's not my specific type, so he's not my high value, but he's somebody's high value man. So that's Melina's high value man, not the favorite.
What are the characteristics for you for the guy to be high value?
I think that he has to have like influence over the people around him, or at least some sort of like strong influence, and also be able to lead, not just financially, emotionally, logically, all the above. I don't know. I feel like it's such a broad phrase because I personally hate that word so much. So I probably haven't done actual homework on what I expect a high value man to be.
But so far, Destiny's two for two with those things. He definitely has influence. And I think from what I've seen about him, he's actually a pretty good leader, at least when it comes to personal things.
Yeah, but I think what's probably like struggling for him is like it's how do I say this? I think like the initial fear. The word fear is probably broad, but like if Destiny, he has to prove that he's a man when it comes to people, which really I think that's the frustrating part because his debating skills are like sick. And I have to say, like physically as a man, like with my man, like I think there's a couple times where we've gotten to almost a road rage and he got out of the car and the other person would just get back in the car after they saw him. Like for me, that's like the instant, like, oh, okay, I don't want to take it there with you, bro. And I think like with Destiny, he'd have to like back it up by like, speaking out of them logically. I think that's the frustration because you do have influence over the immediate people in your circle. But what about like broadly around the people around you? Like, are they like fearful of you? Do they respect you? Do they test you? I think like that's something that I look for because I'm used to that. And also being able to defend yourself fighting wise. Like martial arts, like everyone in my family does martial arts. So for me, that's a major factor as far as high value because it's not about fighting, being able to defend yourself and defend people around you. And I think that some people don't have that skill anymore nowadays. I think it's more so just all talk. And I think that's what my standards are, at least for high value.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point. I do agree that Destiny is like in some spaces a disadvantage because he's kind of skinny or he's not jacked. He doesn't have muscle. He doesn't have he's not like even like a fat guy who looks strong. He's bi, which a lot of people would look at him as weaker for that. And I don't think that should be the case. I personally don't look at him as like weaker because he occasionally likes to sleep with dudes. That's his prerogative, but a lot of people will. And the fact that he has an open relationship, that's a trifecta. So that automatically, like the number one insult for Destiny, he's a cuck, bro. He's a cuck.
Right.
And technically, he's definitely not a cuck. A cuck is someone who watches their girlfriend get fucked. He's been pretty explicit about the fact that they do it separately. There's no like involvement. But yeah, so that's basically the road he has to overcome with those.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole point to it is like you have to be able to have these influences without proving it. I think like having to prove it is the struggle, and even if he successfully does it, it's still like a disadvantage that he has.
Yeah, Angela, do you have to get going, or are you down to chat with this person for 5-10 minutes?
Sure.
All right, cool. I'll drop the link in a second. Let me just finish going through the comments. Ask her to describe her partner, height, income, fitness, looks. So maybe you can, without doxing your finances.
Well, I'm 5'6", he's 5'8". Income, 6 figures. Recently, nothing like profound. Fitness, he's
What
moderate.
about when you guys met initially? What was he at financially?
We were both pretty poor, I have to say. We met like with like hopes of maybe like we'll just be happy, whatever. But then we realized like this is a miserable hamster wheel. We gotta break this terrible generational curse. Um, but yeah, I think that's important to have a good partner because I think like as a man, once you are defeated in life financially or whatever it is, it's important to have a good partner that could kind of like instill like, hey, like I'm here to support you. I think if one person's willing to support you, you'd have more of like a will and a drive to life to at least try it one more time before you give up. And I definitely recognize like he's done projects before me and he failed and he was like freaking miserable. And that's where like my empathy for men goes in like deeply. And that's why I hear the red pill stuff. They don't believe that a woman could be there because they don't see value in that. But I do see value in a woman being super supportive of her man, even if it's just, like super blindly by Bambi like. And I'm like, dude, like that's what he needed at that moment. And showing him that even if unconditional love is not real in a man's world when it comes to a woman, you can at least fake that shit if you really need to, at least and make him feel like at least there's hope. Like, is there one chick that's dumb enough to love me through my miserable like mistakes in life? And I think when you're able to be consistent in that state where he's just really down bad, I think you could really help somebody out of that situation. I think like I watched him kind of evolve, and that's where my respect with him goes like kind of really far. So
yeah, no, you're completely right. I remember in like 2015 when I first got Lyme disease. I had a girlfriend at the time, and at this time I was not making any money. I'll tell you guys this: I was broke as fuck. Okay,
yeah,
I was living in in a house with 10 other people. I was paying like $600 for a room. Like I was not financially successful at all at this point.
yeah,
Maybe it was like 2014. And when I got Lyme disease, I basically became bedridden, and my girlfriend stuck with me all the way. All the way. She would always. She was doing research for me. She was she was standing by me. She didn't leave me. Now look, like that's not every girl for sure, but there are good women out there who will be by your side. They exist. It's not like, and
yeah.
they don't just exist in like fucking Asia. They exist in America too.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's important to recognize that. So it's pretty cool.
Ask her what specific advice she has for men who do the passport thing because they try to level up in the West and they have little success.
My advice for men in the West to not lean towards the passport thing first thing. Like just because you try to, if you do a bunch of applications and you're getting rejected, it's not the job application, it's your resume and you as an individual. So I think like sometimes people tend to shoot too high and they're not being realistic. And I was not saying that it's inevitable that you can't change yourself or your resources or whatever it is. Like, I think that people don't try enough, and I think we're comparing ourselves to unrealistic standards. So I think that's something that you'd have to figure out within yourself. I'm not giving you advice on what to do as a man, but just definitely self-identify like what your main source and problem is when it comes to dating here. Because I would say like women here are more likely, like I would say like even your situation, my situation, if you meet a girl here and she understands you to the core enough, you don't have to be six figure, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to provide the whole thing. She's actually more willing to grow with you financially and in a relationship here if you actually navigate the relationship the right way. Just my only opinion.
The Red Pill puts way too much money on financial success. Like it does play a role for certain girls, like more gold diggery type of girls. But honestly, a lot of girls, they just want to see that you can take care of yourself and that you're not going to like need to rely on them. So you get to it's like a threshold thing, right? As long as you're middle class, you have a place, you have a car, you're not going to get a big advantage going from middle class to being like rich. When it comes to a lot of girls, they're just like, okay. I mean, I've had countless really rich clients who struggle to meet girls.
Right.
Playing with fire. Why and how did Angel learn about the space and enter the manosphere PU at Redpill? That's a good question.
So it wasn't my initial goal to be in this space. I think I just kind of fell into it. And again, like I mentioned, I think my foundation of it came from my childhood, and I guess like it's really strict rules when it comes to dating. And I guess like the way that the red pill stuff, it just kind of aligned with my childhood, and with also the men that I was raised by. It was to me, like I said, it's like a ghetto rhetoric in the red pill space. Just personally saying, again, you're living off of this scarcity mindset, so it made sense. And then as I became this person and I again evolved with my fiance, it was easier for me to navigate out of the space because we no longer aligned with those values. So
Here's an interesting question. Did she say whether she met her fiance online or in person?
Oh no, I met him in person. I didn't even have like social media up until like COVID. Was that like 3 years ago, 4 years ago? So
Was it through friends or at a bar or a coffee shop?
no. So we met mutually through friends.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were both like going through like a breakup or whatever, but we also did like long distance, like from here to Boston for about a couple of months, well, like almost a year. So that was sort of helpful because then you learn how to communicate with someone beyond physical needs. So that definitely helped.
Question to Alex and Angela: would you guys marry for genetics? My answer would be no. I don't know. I'm assuming your answer would be similar, but
Yeah, no. That's extreme.
I mean, like a girl who's I'm going to be attracted to is going to be like good looking, so therefore the kid would have good genetics. But I wouldn't just like I have to marry a 5'8" white girl so that the kid is tall. That to me seems like kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's an extreme question.
Okay, let's do a few more questions. Actually, sorry to the person who wanted to come on. I don't think we'll have time because we're just running. I want to keep this under 3 hours, or ideally even shorter than that.
Yeah.
So, just you can follow Angel on her whatever social media, on her
Yeah.
Instagram, and you can get in touch with her and have a discussion with her if she wants to. Okay, let's do a few more questions. Playing Fire, do you both, Alex and Angela, agree with Destiny on that height, BMI, and income doesn't matter for a guy to get laid? He said on his debate with Will. Okay, this is one of the big disagreements I have with him also. I'll let you answer this first, Angela.
Okay, height, BMI, income doesn't matter for a guy to get laid. So I don't think if you're like obese or whatever, it'll be a thing for you to get laid. You'll probably have to try really, really, really hard. You have to have like massive riz. I don't really know, but I don't believe that should be. I don't think you'll have a high chance of getting laid if you're lacking in all the above.
Yeah, we agree then. Yeah, I think that the income doesn't really matter that much, but the height and BMI absolutely fucking matters. Okay, take a guy who's 5'4", he's not going to do the same as a guy who's 6'1". He's not even going to do similar. Okay, or a guy who's obese and a guy who's in good shape. Again, there's going to be a massive difference. So I forgot that I haven't really debated Destiny on that yet, but I should. But that's one area where we have a massive disagreement. I don't think it's just like it's like they're both doing the same. I mean, he referenced.
At the same token, though, like I'd have to say, if you compare the two, definitely not possible. But for example, I have a cousin. My cousin, he's definitely fat. But it cracks me up because he's always been the fat cousin. But he's like a hardcore, like street dancer type of guy, and his girlfriends are always like hot as shit, just because he has like that I don't know, the fun, quirky dancer riz, I guess. And I definitely noticed like the type of girls he get. I'm like always shocked, but at the same time, I wouldn't compare the type of girls he gets as whatever number he rates himself as the guy who's probably taller or more fit. So I would have to say like you still can get laid, it just won't be as often, and maybe compared to the type of girls that maybe the other guys would get.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You can do it. It's just you're gonna overcompensate with something. Could be really good risk. But assuming you have one guy who's 5'2", one guy who's 6'2", everything else is the same. Same level of risk, same level of social intuition. The guy who's 6'2" is going to do a lot better.
Right.
Okay, let's do one or two more questions. Questions for Angela. What is your content going to be after the leaving the Red Pill arc is over?
What does that mean? My content has been way over that. It's just been, again, developing the core problems of men and women in actual relationships. Like that's more so me, like building that bridge between men and women. The things that people usually don't give a shit about because it's not as entertaining, which is why I always say I have the boringest YouTube page because other than the little random debates that we do, it's more so forcing people to understand why your relationship sucks beyond physical needs and how to be in a relationship. So.
Okay. Are you going to stick more to debates or just conversations?
I think both. Like I would have to say just to spice it up. Like right now I'm only doing Wednesdays, but I think I started Saturday last week and I actually liked it. It's just because like again, I don't know about you, but like I guess when you have like a real life outside of social media, I don't necessarily prioritize being online and like doing the whole course thing that everybody does and all that stuff. I just kind of like engaging with other people and talking about these things and having open dialogue, but it's not necessarily like a number one priority thing for me because again, like it's not like I like heavily monetize off of social media. So yeah, if it comes, cool. If not, I really don't care. But at the same time, it's pretty cool. So
Yeah, I mean, for sure. We're actually going to be, so this is a good time to plug it. We're going to be on a debate panel tomorrow on Tom Foolery's channel. Do you know what the topic is? I don't really know what the topic
so
is.
he put it in the Discord. I don't know if you're on Discord either. I'm sort of getting used to using that. I don't really know much about it, but he did bring up a couple of things. I don't know if you saw it. You didn't see it?
I'll take a look at it later, but maybe just for the chat, you can tell them what the topic
Yeah,
is.
it's the three topics are there benefits to different gender roles in relationships, and should we encourage or discourage those differences? 2, are men fairly discriminated against in the court systems, and what should we change? And 3, are women attracted to older men? Why or why not? So
I think you and I will largely agree on these points. Andrew will definitely disagree with some of the things I say and you say, so that should be interesting. Are you familiar with Andrew from The Crucible?
no, I don't know. I'll look him up.
He's a character. He has some pretty extreme beliefs, but he's a very, very good debater. He's a very skilled debater.
I'm such a pansy at this space. I feel like I'm gonna have to get my panties in a wad when it comes to these hardcore debaters. Oh wait, I think I've seen this guy before. He's on your channel.
Yeah, he's been on my channel a billion times. He's a buddy of mine, but he's a really good debater, and we disagree on like 80% of shit.
Oh wow. Okay. I guess I got to do some homework on this guy then to see how he talks.
I'm
Read
sure
different-
Peter Dinklage has no problem getting late. Yeah, he's the exception to the rule.
Who's that? Who the hell's Peter Dinklage?
The guy who plays Tyrion in Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he does fine. I mean, he's married right now, but yeah, I'm sure he did fine. But again, he's the exception. Let's end it on this question: how did Angel evolve from hardcore feminism to Redpill?
I think when you meet the person that you really want to be with, and you start to realize that you're the problem, and then you take too much accountability. I think like when I realized again, like I hated women growing up because I didn't like the relationship I had with the women in my family. So raised by men. And then you become a hardcore feminist. Basically, you hate the way that women are. And then you become too red pill. And then you start realizing like sometimes it becomes an echo chamber and that some people do need to take accountability beyond just pointing fingers. So
Well, it's good that you have the self-awareness to kind of learn from your life experiences. Not a lot of people do that. But yeah, I thought this was a really good discussion. We agreed a lot more than I thought, but that's okay. I don't mind doing like good discussions. I feel like we covered a lot of interesting topics. I don't know. What were your thoughts about this quote unquote debate?
Definitely in quota. It was definitely I thought it was a good discussion. I actually enjoyed it. I like the way you articulate stuff. I think it's really great to talk to people who have an open mind and also not scared to have these quote unquote debates. It's hard to disagree with you if you're being like, again, logical. In fact, I'm never going to argue with logic. It has to make sense. So I think it's great that you can do that. And yeah, I mean, nope, nothing bad here. I think it was cool. Really cool.
Yeah, not everyone in the manosphere is a douchebag, just 90%, but there's
just 90%.
There's a 5, 10, 15% that's actually not that bad. Yeah, they exist. We exist. We're small in proportion. Okay, wait, just one more super chat. Let me just ask her if she can speak Viet. Can you speak Viet?
Yeah, what is he saying? Xin chào. Xin chào các bạn. I don't know what gakban means. Maybe that's like, so we have different dialects in you know, you have the north, the south, and all that shit. So it just really depends. But I definitely know you're saying hi to me. But yeah, hi. How are you too?
All right, cool. All right, Angela, do you want to plug your channels and your social media and whatnot?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube or Instagram under Angela Knight 2.0. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Very simple.
Cool. All right, guys, if you want to see more of Angela and more of me, I'm going to be on a panel tomorrow on Tom Foolery's channel. So that should be good. I'm looking forward to that. There's going to be a lot of people there. Angie from The Crucible will be there. It's going to be a packed show. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Appreciate y'all and have a good night, everybody. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.